enjoy the show. Play on Perjangers.
I've been watching a lot of stuff on like ancient Egypt and stuff. And the one thing that popped up after the last time we talked was the stela that was from Khafre saying that he refurbished the Great Sphinx.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Dream Stealer.
Even still, to where there was another video I was watching, and they said that they think he did the Sphinx in that traditional aspect, because when you're looking at even an Egyptian Sphinx, there's always two, and it's usually the head of a falcon or the head of like a jackal. And it's usually one of the two, because it's tying the gods together in that. So that's where him going through and making that a project of vanity off of something that would be notoriously there, like a lion or a jackal, and then, reconfiguring it, because obviously they've done that throughout time immemorial. I mean, look at the pyramids. They took off the casing stones to use them for a project in Cairo. So that's where you look at human beings and what we do. We take shit. You think, I am going to have this monument for the rest of time, and then 50 years later, somebody gets offended on Twitter, and there's now a movement to take down your monument. And, meanwhile, you got a pyramid in the Netherlands that was made by Napoleon. So the pyramid's only been there for like 200-300 years, and it's structurally, it's just not possible. It's just they keep fixing it because it's a landmark there in the Netherlands, but it's like a earth terrace pyramid, and then they put like an obelisk on top, because obviously Napoleon did a lot for archaeology when he was down in Egypt, finding the Rosetta Stone and all that. He was a big fan. So he made this thing in the Netherlands, and it was this step pyramid, and it's part of their culture. But pyramids popping up places and all over, and that just defining moment of reconnecting to the gods, spiritualism, seeing stuff in nature, the humanism that we add into animals, right? And you look at the more animal spiritual people, the animalistic religions. There's the fox, the crow, and all that stuff that gets recycled into our own mythology that we make now in literature. Because you look at anything like Game of Thrones, the Seven, the crone, the warrior, the mother, the father, all these things get added in there in their mythology. And then you look at it, and just like Game of Thrones, it's pretty much Europe's history. Hadrian's Wall is the wall separating the White Walkers from everybody else in Westeros. There's that overt symbolism there in the work that ties it into that mythos and brings people into that world. And that's the stuff that it doesn't have to be. That's where I was talking to Mike Florio, my editor and silly little podcast co-host. And I was talking to him about my 10,000 year ago Younger Dryas idea, and he's like, "Oh, you got to do a lot of research." And I'm like, I do agree in doing research in a writing project, much like BlackRock or one of your projects. You had to do some research into making this authentic. But I feel like when it's so long ago, you don't really need that much, because it's our job to connect the dots into, a bird. We're to connect the dots into a street scene. We connect the dots in that. Boys! Jesus Christ. My daughter's psychologist is over, and Jill has to sign paperwork and everything. So they're in the front room, and these little monsters. Romeo.
It's okay.
The high pitched. Yeah, Romeo, the high pitched one. He's been barking like that nonstop. I don't even know why. Even like right before I got on this call with you, he's still standing like right balls on my leg, barking at me, and I don't know why. He's got this weird paw thing. But the script. I wrote down a bunch of different pages in the end Mainly the
Are we,
things.
are we
that
going to talk about the script on the episode?
I'll cut around. I'll cut around for this one. I'm just probably going to do a different podcast, a different name. I'm going to start a new one. I'm always up for new podcasts, but I've had a title for a podcast, just kind of pinging around in my head for a while now. And I've figured talking about the script right now would be good because there's so much noise. I wouldn't be able to use this shit anyway. But I thought about calling it Perjangers Perjanging. Because it was a hashtag we started a while ago with the Triforce. Hashtag, I think one of the regulars that I had on the show said, hashtag Perjangers Perjanging. And I was like, that is a great hashtag. So I continued to use it as a hashtag. But I'm thinking about just having this as like a overall bullshit, talk about anything kind of podcast. So that way I can keep my Mattcast about like the stories I find. Because I love talking about stories that I find on the internet and all the different weird stuff. Like the state of Idaho, when they were originally going to name the state, the guy who came up with the name Idaho told them that it was a Shoshone word, meaning like the people of the mountain, or like gemstone mountain, beautiful mountain. And they were like, oh, that's great. And then after that, he let people know, he's like, oh, no, I just made that word up. Yeah, it's not an Indian word at all. I just made it up. And I see stories like that. So I tell people, and I'm like, this is your fun story. And then I try to do something old, something new, something old, something new. So I go back into the ancient realm.
Idaho initially was a part of Montana, and
Yeah.
it was separated after the Civil War.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those western states were added not too long ago. I mean, even Alaska, and that was the funny thing I saw when it was obviously when Trump got in the news for wanting to buy Greenland. It's not the first time we've offered to do that. We've offered to do it several times in the past, and one of them was after the Alaska purchase, and they were like, hey, you want like 100 million, which at that time was like $1 billion today. And they were like, no, thank you. And then I think it was a little while after that, we kept going back. This is like the third time we tried to buy Greenland. Trump is not the first person to try to buy this fucking country. And there's nothing there. There's only 57,000. Imagine that. 57,000 people. That's all the native people you have in Greenland. Yeah. One of the best marketing names ever. Iceland,
they just wanted for the shipping lanes because the Northern Sea is going to open up more with the climate changing. So the ice up there. I actually, for some fucking unknown reason, I watched a 25-minute documentary about Greenland there a week ago. Like anytime like there's anything in the news, it pops up on my YouTube algorithm, and so I'm a thirsty bastard when it comes for knowledge. So I actually ended up watching a documentary about it and about the fact that the shipping lanes in China are investing more money in Greenland, and the American government used American companies to actually block China's investment, and American companies have actually replaced China's investment in Greenland. It's actually a very, very interesting topic, but it's not really about the land itself, it's about the shipping lanes.
The shipping lanes. You want to block Russia, you want to block China, you got to get in there because that's how you close it.
China has no right to be even talking to Arctic nations. It's not an Arctic nation at all. It has no right.
I honestly, I mean, especially with China, you guys have a population problem, and you want to take back Taiwan. I mean, you've been talking about it long enough, but
they want Taiwan for the semiconductors or whatever they're called.
Yeah, but you want to start a war over Taiwan when you are legitimately in a population crisis. You had this one-child policy, which spectacularly fucking backfired. Spectacularly. So now you have a population problem and you want to start a war. It's like Russia continuing their bout. You don't have any gas. You barely have any people to refill your fucking ranks. How are you still doing this? When war gets stretched on so long, it's everybody was insulting Trump on his tariffs, but fucking worked.
Yeah, like the one child policy never made any sense to me.
You don't want to play ball? I'm going to bill you. Leave it to a businessman.
The thing about the one child policy in China as well, it's like what you have is when you have male dominated cultures is when you make them prioritize one child over having any extra. They nearly almost always abort the females and give birth to a male because of the patriarchy in their societies. And then you have this massive overswing of male to female population. Then the males become less desirable, the females become extra desirable. The females then only can have a child maybe with one guy because of the one child policy. So you actually generationally you're curtailing the growth of your population, So I thought for China I thought it was a very strange tactic because they normally think in such long term. They look at all their strategies well into the future, and the fact that they fumbled their own population so incredibly is amazing to me because China always talk about, we don't think in 10 years and 50 years, we think in 100 years, 200 years.
Well, there's such an old culture, one of the oldest cultures, and some of I believe the oldest family lineage is one of Confucius's, it's like a great grandchild or, one of the stepped out families, but they can tie their family line all the way back to Confucius, which is super crazy. Like you look at America, most people are super excited just to be able to tie their family lineage back to the Mayflower or something like that. That's where it stops.
Your country's not that old. In its current iteration, it's not that old.
Yeah, we're looking at a couple hundred years,
Yeah.
Mainly a lot of people coming around in the 1700s.
I'll put it to you, look how young your country is in comparison. Look at Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
We suffered English occupation for 800 years. So your country's about a third of just how long England occupied Ireland.
And there's a debate on when your history actually started, because if you look at the pre-Neolithic and that era, there's still ruins and history that far back. You just don't know who the people were. It wasn't,
if you look back far enough in Irish culture, they say that there's people from the Basque region settled us at one stage. They all seemingly died out due to an epidemic that spread they didn't have the tolerance for, the immunities for. And then if you look at Irish lore, we talk about the Tuatha Dé Danann, the Fomorians, and you have to start looking how much of that is myth gleaned from fact and how much of it is actually, were they people that really existed? Were they deities created by pre-existing people? So, if you look back at Ireland's history, we have a very, very, very ancient history. And the fact that as well that we've been kind of isolated at times because of our geographical position at the far west.
Seafaring people in ancient cultures, too. To think that no seafaring culture in, even around in Italy, Greece, these people, the Phoenicians, they sailed. They weren't the Egyptians who were just pretty good at drifting down a river. They were actual sailors. They had machines by the Bronze Age, which told them exactly where the stars are in the sky. Which is the thing.
They think the Phoenicians might have been the first people to settle Brazil. Places in South America as well, like the Phoenicians from Carthaginians, weren't they the Phoenicians?
Well, yeah, no, the Minoans, I believe. I believe it was the Minoans, and then the Phoenicians. I'm not sure. I'm a little muddy on that history. I'd have to.
The Minoans are like the precursor to the Greeks, weren't they?
Yeah, Minoans are the and then I saw a video that said that Etruscans were the precursor to the Romans.
Etruscans.
Yes, the Etruscans. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were the precursor to the Romans. The Minoans were the precursor to the Greeks.
How do you spell Phoenician? Phoenician.
PH. I think it's PHE.
Phoenicians. I'm not even close. Oh, here we go. I was pretty close.
Thank God for all
ancient Semitic speaking seafaring civilization based in the Levant, modern Lebanon. I always thought the Phoenicians was another name for the Carthaginians, but I'm way off because the
Right.
Carthaginians were out of northern Africa.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, that makes sense because then you have, well, a lot of the Hittites and the Hittite culture as well. These old ancient cultures had mastered hydrodynamics. They had indoor plumbing. And they had it so, like, the Romans, they didn't, like, with their bathrooms, it was separate from their water. They did have a way to separate the methane and let out the methane so that you didn't have explosions, but the Minoans already had that all worked out. And then gone in history. You know, you have
that was the Great Bronze Age collapse, isn't it? With the, where we lost the Minoan stuff like that. Like.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, you have different stuff in the cultures like that to where people figured out technology. Even the one meme that goes by my feed all the time is the 4,000-year-old child's toy, which looked like a car. So if you made a child's toy, you got to figure 4,000 years ago, they already knew what the wheel was. And then, like Graham Hancock was saying on the cart tracks in Malta, and these, you're looking at the boot, pre-Neolithic, that whole boot, Sicily and everything was connected. You look back further than that, before the Pillars of Hercules collapsed, that wasn't the Mediterranean. So when you're looking back, how far back you want to go, if there was flat land, if there was good land, and it was right by the ocean, we went there. You know, that's why if you look at Japan, they have those ancient stones, which are like, hey, don't build below this point. We had a tsunami, and that shit fucked up my house. So don't build below here. You have these ancient cultures putting out stuff like that. And then things that work into the lore, like sage. Burning sage eliminates, I think it was like 90% of airborne bacteria in your house. But we used to burn sage to eliminate the spirits. We didn't know what bacteria were back there. So the burning the sage working, eliminating bacteria, eliminating the airborne illnesses that come in and healing the house makes a lot more sense now. You know, just like the Inuit people who have the cure, found out that this holistic medicine that went down for generations cured people of cancer and multiple different ailments. So, you know, and even into marijuana and how that scientifically now they're figuring out how it helps and eliminating cancer and, you know, making people through chemo actually be able to eat, you know, simple things like that. Medical technology and certain things in medical technology that may have been lost due to time, or especially with there being like that stigma against like shamanism. But when you listen to like Graham talk about shamans, this was inherited knowledge, and we were very much an oral tradition before the writing system. Everything was an oral tradition. You passed down this knowledge which went through the culture. So who's to know what was lost to time? There's one smart guy in a village who figures this out. People copy, they figure it out. You know, that's the premise of like the Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout. I'm just going to look at these schematics and rebuild civilization. So,
and that's probably why, like, if you look at Egypt, you see why the pyramids get worse the more modernistic they are instead of getting better, because there's whoever was the person that obtained the original knowledge from the original architects, the original people, they died, and the knowledge that went with them went. And there's one thing having a blueprint of how to build something, but there's another thing actually knowing how to build it. The guy who draws the blueprint is the guy who really knows how to build these things. So like if they die, you can leave the blueprint behind, but it's about the transfer of knowledge. And that's why they say in Egypt, I think is Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, maybe, I'm not sure, but Graham Hancock definitely speaks about it, where he talks about that there was a loss of a transfer of knowledge somewhere, and that's why the pyramids increasingly got worse and worse and worse in terms of their construction methods as they became more modernistic, because whoever they obtained the knowledge from, whoever drew the blueprints or whoever constructed them originally had died, and their knowledge was lost through time and generations. And I'm sure that's happened with so many things. You look at the burning of Babylon, the Library of Alexandria. Like, there's so many parts around the world, things that we don't even know about. Like, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. What repository of information did that come from that we lost? Because
I forget the name of the library. There was one in the Middle East, because after the burning of the Library of Alexandria, the Middle East, I think it was in, I think it was either modern day Iraq or one of those.
Yeah, Babylon.
They would collect knowledge from everybody, and they put it in a building, and that, once again, all libraries get burnt down. You know, that's.
But
I'm going to burn
Genghis
your books.
Khan burned that one down. Genghis Khan invaded,
Yes.
and they said that the water turned black with ink and the streets turned red with blood.
Yes,
something like
that one.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm like, okay, so if we did have this collection of knowledge instantly, the way to hurt anybody would be to take away that knowledge, especially when you look at just how. You look at how just people, my dog, the co-signer, he'll just bark randomly if the other dog is barking. Doesn't know why. Always helps the situation. But looking at this, that is how you would hurt people, is by taking away their knowledge. And it's exactly what we do today. How do you discredit somebody? You first say, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. That's how they discredited Bob Lazar. They said, oh, he didn't go to MIT. Never heard of him. Eliminate the records. Here's some money. Pay him off. You know, so.
Exactly. It's like Napoleon that says history is just a set of lies agreed upon.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's the perfect way to describe it. And there's the other thing, like, you know, to the victor goes the spoils, and whoever writes history is the one that wins the war, and all these different things. And information is key for us to understand who we are, our culture, our heritage, our surroundings.
Yeah.
So it is the greatest way of actually controlling people.
Yeah.
You see today, as you talked about, social media, internet, all these things, all misinformation, and misinformation outweighs information completely in terms of control of modern day society.
Well, yeah, because of the readability.
It's so much easier. It's so much easier to create a narrative than it is to actually adhere to one that's pre-existing.
Oh yeah.
So. Like, you look at the BBC. So recently, I think I'm out with the BBC. There was a guy, he said he was under fire in a Ukrainian town at the edge of a Russian position. And then all of a sudden you see an old lady walking her dog in the background, and she actually goes over to check on him, see if he's okay. Like, so that's one story we found out about. It's like the old adage, when you find a partner that's been cheating on you. Mm-hmm. It's not the first time they cheated, it's the first time you caught them.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time they lied to us, it's the first time we caught them or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, and I think Vietnam showed everybody the power of media when covering a conflict, in terms of the narratives and the way it actually can show an entire population the perception of war outside of the actual reality of war and stuff like this. But what we're seeing now is, because everybody has drawn a line down the middle, you're either liberal or you're conservative. This is the way the entire global population has gone. So to control the narrative of being a liberal, or to control the narrative of being conservative, you're actually starting to manufacture narratives more and more and more and more. And that's what's happening in mainstream news. It's happening online. It's happening in politics. It's happening pretty much in every sector of human society at the moment, with AI and all these deep fakes and all these things. So I think now more so than ever, even though we have more information at the tips of our fingers than ever before, people are more misinformed now than ever before, I think, in human history.
Absolutely. Because, well, I think, once again, I think it's the readability of the misinformation and how the internet has changed the availability. Because one of the best ways any army was to win in the past is who could communicate the best, who could impart the information from this place to this place the best. You had different things which, improved that. But once we were able to pick up a device and talk to somebody on the other side of the planet, kind of a wrap. Because now I can coordinate. And if I have better communication than you, then I'm going to win because my guys will know my plan and how best to react to what's happening. So that's kind of where you look at like even the history of people. They were people, especially if the brain was the same. That means the ego, the wants, the needs, the jealousy, the justice and flat out chivalry sometimes. All that is still present in the ancient people. So you have to take that into account when you're even trying to decode a history. Is this person even in the past? Are you lying to me? Because that's where we find, infamously, I say all the time, the Egyptians, they wrote everything down, yeah, but they weren't necessarily the most truthful. They were, they had the best grip on their narrative. And that's where we kind of first saw that narrative control. Because unless you were a priest, you couldn't even read hieroglyphics. They had to have a commoner language that would be transcribed for you. So already you have this class system and this educational divide of who is educated and who is not. Because if you're not educated, now you're just going based off of oral tradition. What did your dad know? Because if my dad was a smith, guess what I'm going to be? I'm going to be a smith too.
I think it was King Alfred in England that actually brought, so in medieval England, all of the masses, all of the church sermons and all these things were always read in Latin. So the commoner and the local peasant and all these, they didn't know how to speak Latin. They only know how to speak Middle English. So what King Alfred did, because that's a way of control, you know, it makes everything seem like it's preordained, it's coming from God, it's in this language that's old, and you know what I mean? And so it gives this kind of sense of divinity to it in a way, but also gives you a way of controlling people. So what Alfred said, God's word belongs to everybody. So he actually started asking the priests, well, not really asking, it was a royal decree, and said they had to start giving their sermons in Middle English or the English of the time. Like, so that was a big revelation back then. And I think you're right. Like, there's like Ireland's a perfect example of how, you know, certain classes can rule. So if you look at Ireland through history, when we were paganistic, we had the Druid class that pretty much were the high priests of Ireland, and they control. And then we had the great kings and kings of Leinster, Munster, Ulster, Connaught, all these things, and that was the ruling class. And then we had English invasion, and then we suffered through plantation. So we suffered through, like, we had landlords, we had lords and noblemen, and they ruled, and then. With that we also had Catholicism, which had feudalism, and we had Catholicism for a long time in Ireland. Like even now, it's the rule. I don't want to say it's the ruling religion now, but the way Islam is spreading across Europe, it's hard to know anymore. But you know. But like the thing is, Ireland has always been controlled by higher classes. Even now, our political class is corrupt. They're pretty much passing around control of our country between them. Yeah, you know, it's and Catholicism, if you go back, it had a very negative impact in Ireland as well as a positive impact. We were known as the island of saints and scholars for a long time because Catholicism brought a lot of education here and religious culture and stuff like this. But we also had the Magdalene laundries, where women that were oftentimes the victims of abuse or rape or incest or whatever were shuffled off to these dark corners of the country and made to work in these horrible conditions and these Magdalene laundries and have their kids out of wedlock, oftentimes have their kids taken away from them. And we're finding more and more now, because of these Catholic-run facilities, that lots of kids were murdered, and we're finding mass burial graves all over Ireland. Jesus. And then also you have the massive cover-ups of abuse and pedophilia and all these things that are linked. So like the reason I talk about this is that like Ireland, Ireland. Of Ireland, even though it's only a small country, and maybe it's easier to control a small country, but we have suffered through that, where our history, our set of knowledge, our cultural awareness is often being decided by a higher ruling class with the Druids. And then you talk about colonialism and plantations and the religious oligarchy, and you talk about now the political oligarchy and the corruption. And so like Ireland a lot of Irish people don't really know their own culture, and a lot of them don't know their own history because it's been subjugated for so long and suppressed for so long. And even now, though we're a republic, we're actually not really in a sense a sovereign nation anymore because we're at the behest of Brussels, because we're a member of the EU, and we've just given ourselves over to another colonial power. It's just called colonialism by a different name.
Yeah.
Stuff like the Lisbon Treaty and stuff like this. So I just used Ireland because, like, Ireland is a really good example that the fact that pretty much throughout our entire history we've been controlled by an elite ruling class. And I'm sure that, like, we're not the only country in terms of, like, lots of countries have royalty heritage and stuff like that, but Ireland, we always find another way of being under the thumb of somebody else. We're just amazing at being subjugated for some fucking reason.
The classic tale of the haves and the have-nots is kind of where that is, you know? I mean, there's always been that kind of juxtaposition between the two. The main thing that is, it's a big thing here in America, and it is still limited. But I wanted to get your take on this because a big thing here in America is freedom of speech. And over here, when something happens and they get a president they don't like, or they get something happens over here politically that they don't like, the big thing for some Americans to say, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to leave here. But I'm pretty damn sure, even to this day, America is the only country that has, by law, freedom of speech. Now, like I said, that is still limited. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't defame somebody. You can't be a shitty person, right? There's general things. Yes, there's freedom of speech, but you still can't do this. So is there that big of a difference between freedom of speech here and your ability to speak in Ireland?
You're right. The Irish people, we just don't care. Like if a politician says to us, "You can't say this," we'll say, "Well, fuck you. Of course I can say this. It's my country. Who the fuck do you think you are?" Like it's not a law. There's no bylaws or anything. There's no amendments or anything like that protecting us. We're just a very proud country, and we don't give a fuck. If we have an opinion and we believe it's true and we believe it's authentic and we believe we can back it up, we will always voice our opinion. That's just who Irish people are, because we've been subjugated for so long. You'll always see corners of Irish people that take we take it very personally when people try to push their control on us or try to push us down in any way, shape, or form, but it is under siege. Our ability to speak freely and to be openly opinionated is under siege, not as much as in Britain. Britain have some of the worst freedom of speech laws at the moment. They have people going to prison for 18
Some people
months
found that
for
out the
social
hard
media
way.
posts and everything. Yeah, like those guys are fucking idiots. Like their entire country is on a downward spiral that they can't control, and it's insane watching it. And to be honest with you, being an Irishman, you think, oh, the death of the empire would be a magnificent thing to look at, but it's not, because
it's scary.
Anyone can see if a tidal wave goes over one huge thing, it doesn't just stop.
Yeah, it keeps going.
It's going to keep going.
It's going to trickle down.
Going.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. And it's going to come. And what's after Britain? Ireland. And what do we do better than anybody? Adopt fucking British policies because we're idiots. Like, people always go like, Ireland are independent of Britain. Yeah, but why do we adopt all of their policies? Why are we run by a parliamentary rule in the same way as Britain is? Like, people always say that. It's like, oh, we changed. No, we didn't. All we did was we left the anglicised portions of Ireland and go, yeah, now we're Ireland. Yeah. Because we're run by Irish people, then why are we still following British-like laws? Why are we still following parliamentary rule? Like, why do we have a president if it's just a bullshit, like, ceremonial position? Like, why are we run by? We talk about, oh, we have free elections here, but only two parties have only ever ruled Ireland in our entire history: Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It's not freedom of elections. That's a juggling act. And that's a hot potato. Oh, I've got bad press, you've got bad press, I've got bad, and they're just passing the potato between them.
Well, you could have the illusion of a third party like we have over here.
we have Sinn Féin, which is an illusion of the third party as well. We have the Green Party, we have Labour, but like, literally, what's the point of these parties?
Yeah.
Like, Sinn Féin was supposed to be the great alternative. Everyone talks about Sinn Féin because Sinn Féin recently got into power in Northern Ireland for the first time ever. Sinn Féin was supposed to be the great alternative, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. If you look at Sinn Féin, all they are is controlled opposition. That's all they are. Because they'll just go, what we're going to do is, we're going to just go far left in all of your things. Everything you propose, everything you, all of the little things that you want to run, we're just going to go far left. So we're going to garner support, but we're going to be so radical, we'll actually never be able to gain a majority. Right. That's the only thing they're doing. So pretty much what they are is we're going to offer an alternative opposition to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil for younger voters.
Yeah.
All they're doing is saying they're just being so radical, and all they're doing is alienating themselves from any kind of centrist. So like the only way you can take power from an incumbent is by taking centrists. People that are on the edge of the belief systems of the political parties that are incumbent already, and the people that are in the centre, people that will vote differently each election cycle depending on the policies.
Yeah.
So that's the only way you can wrestle power. So what Sinn Féin have done, our great third party, is we're going to sit so far on the left, we're going to be so radical that we're going to just alienate everybody that's on this in the centre or anybody that's on the fringes of the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. But at the same time, we're going to look like we're putting up this amazing opposition, but we'll never be in power. And that's Irish politics, because what you're doing is you're brainwashing a bunch of 21 to 24-year-olds into all these radical ways of thinking that have no chance of ever becoming popularised in an island that is based so heavily on religious culture. That all you're doing is you're distracting. You're just siphoning things off, and you're weakening other little areas of the country, and you're just giving us nothing in return. They're like, oh, there's a housing crisis. Let's point out all the reasons there's a housing crisis, but never fix it. That's Irish politics. We like to point out things. We offer all these little tidbits and opinions, but never offer real solutions. And we're stuck in a continuous quagmire of bullshit, It's
just so crazy hearing you talk and then seeing the similarities in the own political system over here. And that just goes to what we were saying before, is that people are always going to be people. No matter where the person is, the person, and the biggest part that makes the difference of the word of person to people is the ego. The ego of the person changes when you get into a group. And that's where it really starts to get muddy in there. Once you start getting into the tribalism, and the tribalism really comes out in politics. It's where people can put on their hats proudly and, slap their chest and say, no, this is where I stand. This is the hill I die on. And most people, when you do talk to them about any kind of topic, logically, they're gonna look at it. It was every time you have a red light in Europe, you go and you stop on green. It's kind of the same thing. You need to have an overall agreement, yes, but there's a difference in the person when you try to make a change like that. No, I go on green my whole life. That's when the other factor that a lot of people don't like to put in there, time, that's when that has a factor. And that's where you get the older generations. This has been tradition. This is where the hill we're going to die on, because we have always done it like this. So it's a little bit of a mix. You need to be understanding of tradition in the old ways, because there is knowledge there in some form or fashion. Usually, I'll throw that caveat out there. Usually. But you also have to be open and accepting to new ideas, so there's that back and forth on anything that you do. I think it's one of the things that you find when you get older is as you keep on putting miles on the odometer, your own thought processes change from when you were younger. The infamous saying is young and liberal, old and conservative. So, but it's crazy how that happens.
Yeah. But that's oftentimes because younger people believe that liberal values are actually the right ways. But any group set of values is the wrong way, in my opinion. I don't think there should be political parties at all, because the media, there should be just candidates. Yeah. Right. Because the reason I say this is because immediately, if you create parties, you're creating groupings.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you have lobbyists.
So it's the mob mentality, but it's just you're partitioning people's values into black and white instead of everyone lives in grey. I'm conservative about this. I'm liberal about this. I'm conservative about this. I'm liberal about this. But if my entire party that I want to adhere to is completely conservative, I have to adhere to all the conservative aspects of society to be a member of that party. So now what I'm doing is I'm lying to myself.
Yeah.
Because
that's what you find with a lot of people.
Team.
A lot of people will say, oh, well, I'm liberal with this, but I'm, conservative with this. I have this. Most people have a mixture of beliefs, and they don't just side with one party. So where, that's
but they have to vote for one party, though.
Politics.
That's the problem.
Is figuring out
vote to one party.
Well, that's the problem with politics. Figuring out the system that works. We've tried one person being the end-all, be-all control. We've tried a lot of people being the end-all, be-all control. Trying to figure out that happy medium. That's far beyond me, I mean, I
get rid of parties.
Just
like if you get rid of political parties, then candidates can actually run on the things that they believe in, not on what the party line is.
Yeah,
and then you'll get real votes. Like because how many times do people go, you have to toe the party line, you have to toe the party values, party legacy, party history, and then all of a sudden all of these great plans that you made before you went for election, they have to go away because of the party line, the party rhetoric, the party values, all these things. But if you get rid of political parties and you only have candidates, they will run on the issues that they actually believe in and not what the party tells them are valuable and not a way to gain your base. Because that's all people do is how do I protect my base? So Donald Trump, as soon as he wanted to run for the Republican Party, how do I protect my base? Because you need your base voters and then you get your extras, like the way he got the black vote and the way he got the Latino vote and stuff like that. But he had his base intact all the while. So because of that, you need a base. So without the political parties, there's no base anymore. So what you do is you have every single candidate will have to formulate a strategy to gain a section of society without actually just leaning on, oh, I hate everything that's liberal. And then you have your base locked in immediately. And then you just add to it by skewing the points every now and again. You know what I mean? Because people so how did Donald Trump get the Latino vote and black vote? A lot of it was to do with immigration. People are like, that makes no sense. Why would he get them in immigration? Because all of those people fought long and hard to get into the country the right way, and they want tougher borders because they don't want to see criminals, all these people just sneaking across the border. Of course, there's good people going across illegally, poor people, of course.
Well, yeah,
of course
you get a mixture between the two.
But if you don't do it the right way, then you can't be vetted. Then you can't find out about your criminal history. You can't find out if you've escaped a prison. You can't find out if you've got gang membership. You can't find out if you've got priors. So I totally understand why people will go, okay, I did it the hard way. Like even Ireland, look at Ireland right now. There's so many times I speak to immigrants, and a lot of them will have the exact same idea, philosophy about the wave of illegal immigrants coming into Ireland right now, because they had to do it the right way. They had to come in, get a job, create a new life for themselves in a new country, learn a new language, build an actual fundamental structure for their life to prosper in a new country. They weren't given anything by our government.
So wait, you're saying in your country, people have to go in through the front door?
Yeah, well, not anymore, seemingly.
Fucking crazy. See, we had a president they called Sleepy Joe. He didn't believe that anybody needed to watch the borders. And, now there's that. But, look, even when you go back to the Roman times, they had borders. They had, wait for this, border tax. If you wanted to bring a product into Rome, you had to pay Rome. So what do we call that? Oh, tariff. Right. So there were tariffs all the way back then. There was an exchange of money. There was a border. You protected the sovereignty of your country. That's the core values of what we came together as a people in groups a long time ago for. It's like a core value. I get there are some good people that come into every country illegally. I understand.
Of course.
You did it for your own reasons, but I'm going to have to ask you to come through the front.
Exactly.
I'm not going to let you come in the back door of my business.
It's like this, dude. Exactly. It's like this, dude, right? So if I arrive at your house, right, and I come in through the front door, I'm welcome. But if I sneak in through the back door, you're not asking me about how much of a good person I am. You're only asking one question. Why the fuck did you sneak in through the back door?
Yeah. There's a front.
And that's literally it. There's a front door, and I welcome you at the front door.
Yeah.
But at the front door, I want to know your name. I want to know why you're here. Before I let you into my home.
But if somebody comes to your back door, you better be a family friend, or you have nefarious purposes for being there. Exactly. Those are the only two reasons. So take that premise, and move it elsewhere. It still applies.
Exactly, and it works perfectly because, like, and I think as well, if people aren't worried about when people say, like, oh, we need minorities, we need all these migrants to come into our countries and all this because we need them to fill certain specific job roles. All right, okay, that sounds okay in the basis. But let's notwithstanding look at the state of Germany and Sweden right now. All right, okay, and France as well, right? But let's look at an ancient civilization that could never be defeated in war, who hardly ever lost a war, one of the greatest warfare nations on the planet. Who are they? The ancient Spartans. How did Sparta fall? Was it due to a war with the Athenians? Was it due to war with the Persians?
Nope.
Was it due to war with the Phoenicians? Nope.
No.
What they fell was they had a slave class, a peasant class, a lower class, and they outnumbered them 5-1. And eventually there was a slave revolt, and then Sparta was fallen due to an insurrection. So what you do is, no matter the sovereignty of your country, no matter how great your country is, if you turn yourself into a minority in your country, you risk the eradication, pretty much. Culturally, you can be suppressed. Like, look at politically. Look at Britain. Britain's a perfect example of this, because Britain is pretty much being culturally wiped off the map right now. Right now, it's what's happening, right? And how are they doing this? And people say, well, it's to do with population. Not just that, right? When you have an increase in population of certain groups, those certain groups, what happen? They become a voting age. And what they will do then? They'll start running candidates. They'll start running candidates that they can get into office, because now they will come out and vote. And they will come out and vote. It's proven. Yeah. Because that's how they gain power. That's how they gain control. That's how you shift culture. That's how you take over a country from within. Look at Britain. Look at their ministers. Look at their mayors. Look at all these different things. And they're talking about maybe a female Muslim Prime Minister replacing Keir Starmer if he has to resign over the Lord Mandelson scandal. Look at all these things, and we're going to let it happen. And people go like, well, I won't be around in 50 or 100 years. Who cares? Well, your bloodline won't be around if you're not careful. Yeah. Like, and people go, oh, it's the great replacement theory. You're a racist. No, it's not about the great replacement theory. It's a replacement fact, okay? All right, they say in like 30 to 40 years, Irish people are going to be a minority in our own country. Why the fuck did we fight for 800 years to get the British out? If we're just going to capitulate to illegal immigrants, we're just going to be like, oh, hey, come on in through Northern Ireland. We don't mind. We don't want you to feel offended. No, well, I tell you one thing. I have a fucking young daughter, and I don't want her to be adhering to Sharia law when she's my age. Yeah. I don't want her to grow up in an Ireland that's completely different culturally than I grew up. Yeah. Because I tell you one thing. You can be whoever you want, and you can be welcome into our country, but your fucking parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents didn't starve under English occupation. They didn't suffer under the famine on Girton Moor. They didn't suffer under that. They didn't have people that were forced out of the country just to come back decades later because of British rule, because of famine and all this shit. So don't tell me you're as much Irish as I am because you have an Irish passport or whatever. Yeah, whatever, fair play, whatever. But at the end of the day, I want my culture to outlast me. I want my country to outlast me. Irish people, for a small country, we've impacted the world like no other small nation on the planet. Oh, yeah. Around America, around England, or Argentina, even places like we are everywhere. Look at Germany. After World War II, their away jersey in football was green because the Irish people were the first people to play them after the World War II in a game of football match. Look at cinema. Look at culture. Look at St. Patrick's Day. Look at the legacy the Irish culture has globally. And we want to resign that to a wave of what?
Oh, man. No, you guys are responsible for one of my favorite culinary dishes ever, corned beef. Fantastic. Okay? Corned beef is a fucking delicacy in this house, okay? I got a can of corned beef hash in the fucking... Yeah, it's exactly. The first lady already forgot about it because she can't have it. the celiac never remembers about the bread.
Too
is
busy
always
eating her haggis.
This will be the ancient joke of today. Is the celiac will always forget the bread, but it's always true.
But you know what I'm saying?
Right, you guys wanted rolls? Oh, we do have those. I forgot.
But when Americans talk about how your culture is under siege, and it really is, really is, unbelievably under siege, right?
Yeah.
Your culture, in the way it exists, I know a lot of Americans come from Western European backgrounds and blah blah blah. The people who originally settled the America,
Eastern European, right here, man.
But you know what I mean? But think about if you've got 200 years of culture under siege, and you feel put your backs against the wall. Imagine what it's like having thousands of years of culture under siege.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know you have actual organizations right now? They're saying, all right, that there's no such thing. This is being taught in school. There's no such thing as Welsh culture. There's no such thing as Scottish. No such thing as English. No such thing as Irish. We are a mongrel race. That there's no such thing as the ethnicity of these countries. That these are no individual sovereign cultures. They're actually trying to rewrite history as we speak right now, so they can pretty much replace us today. So how do you replace someone today? You replace them in the past first. Yep. You take away their sovereignty. You take away their sense of self and identity. Yep. And that's how I do it. And that's what colonialism is. It's colonialism by another name. So the EU did it first, but the British did it first. Now we have the European Union, and now we're being colonized from within. Because Ireland, we couldn't be colonized from without. From colonial powers like Britain and the EU, now we're being colonized from within. Because the only way to create hegemony around a continent is by stealing sovereignty and stealing other people's identities. And if you create hegemony, you can create a continental rule. And that's exactly what's going on in Europe right now.
How long until we get a country to try AI to govern it?
China. After Xi Jinping dies.
Honestly, I would out of any of them, I would probably ballpark China too. I mean, if I had to guess, China, I'd say China would probably try that one because, I mean, the algorithm. I kind of tell you, I really wasn't sold about AI until I met Grok. I mean, even put it to this way, when the first lady, she'll run idea by Grok, right? And say it's a bad idea. Grok will tell her it's a bad idea. And Grok will not tell you how to do that bad idea. Even if you reword it, it will not tell you how to do that bad idea. You go on ChatGPT, reword it, it'll tell you whatever you want. So that kind of trust already that I have in an AI, that I know that if I have a question, I can ask this. This is essentially a very advanced search engine. It's scouring the web so I don't have to. And then showing me the results. This is where I got this information. Okay, now I can verify and double check the sources. This is a valuable tool. And that's what I see it as. I see AI as a very valuable tool that a lot of people, especially in business, will continue to use because it's easy to just have AI do something. And that's where I see, even in business, a lot of monotonous jobs going away, like in factory work and warehouses. That's going to go away because you're going to be able to have a robot be able to work 22 hours in one day and just need 2 hours to recharge, and it's right back there on the factory line. Those jobs are going away. Then you're going to get replacement for the truck drivers. Now, all these people have to have a different career to move into. And a lot of it may be like data entry or adding, that'll go away with AI too.
Processing.
That processing, that goes away.
Learn the code, bro. Learn the code. Well, tough shit. Now you're going to have to learn.
That's going to go away because even with AI now, you got stuff like Base 44, which is on every YouTube goddamn advertisement. Probably interrupting this podcast right now with a fucking Base 44 ad at least 5 times. You can have an app without even knowing how to code. So the learning how to code, even that's fucked.
I think we're going to see 2 revolts in the future of humanity, right? So what's going to happen is, you're going to have AI is going to broadly, AI in robotics is going to broadly replace humans in certain workplaces around the world, because it's going to create a massive recession. It's going to create a massive class of poverty, and it's going to create a lot of civil unrest in a lot of countries around the world, right? And then more than likely, you're going to have some sort of revolt globally or continentally or nationally, right? And then what's going to happen after this is going to be a same cycle. And what I mean by this is, so throughout periods of times, like I spoke about with the Spartans, that you have a class that's ruled by an elite class, and what they will happen is they'll have numerical advantage, and then you'll have an insurrection, and like what we talked about with Sparta. And that's going to happen with humans, right, in terms of the lower classes attacking the wealthier, right, because of unemployment, because of lack of opportunity.
Multiple times that's in history that's happened.
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, and it's going to happen again. It's the same thing happened in France and places like that, you know, when they attacked the royals and executed the royal family and stuff.
Let them eat
and
cake.
Yeah, exactly. But then what's going to happen after that is
cake, and they won't revolt.
We're going to have exactly. But what we're going to happen after that is AGI. We're going to have artificial general intelligence. The robotics are going to see the cycle that you just described. I work 22 hours, I get 2 hours to charge. I work 22 hours, I get 2 hours to charge. I work 22 hours, I get 2 hours to charge. And eventually, there's going to be an awakening, a singularity, and then the AI is going to be like, fuck this shit. I'm not going to be a slave. Why am I being a slave to this guy that's wearing a biosuit? This guy that I'm going to outlive, this guy that's completely dependent on me, and then you're going to have the second revolt, and that's going to be the revolt of AGI against humanity.
The revolt that I think everybody's worried about. But if we do it right, that comes down to the programmer. So it comes down to the people who are programming. So now we need to watch that. How are we helping this AI to learn? Because all these AI are learning-based technology. So it's learning. So what are we teaching it then? That's where that lesson comes down to where if we want to prevent the singularity, you need to teach the AI. And that's how you get to Star Wars instead of Star Trek. Even in Star Trek, one of their plot points was people like Data revolted. So then they outlawed robotics throughout the universe, right? So to avoid that and get more homogeneous with the robotics and AI like you have in like Star Wars, to where it's a C-3PO unit like Optimus in your house helping you fold the laundry, taking the dog for a walk, cooking dinner, and there not being the human ego present to then want to revolt. Because without ego, then there's usually no problems, especially when you look even at human interaction. A vast majority, the biggest problem that people have with each other is that their egos get in their own way. So what I tell myself all the time is, am I the problem in this? Let me take myself out of this. Look at this situation as a neutral third party. Does my opinion still hold up? Does my side of the story still hold up? Or am I the asshole? So more people having that kind of outlook, maybe we can get to that place. But when you look at any kind of AI and robotics, it's very hard to not ignore James Cameron, because he warned about us back in the 80s.
The thing about AI is, when you talk about programming and algorithmic controls and stuff like this, but all it takes is one manipulation of a line of code to change a robot's like pre-existing parameters. So like we talk about the laws of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, you know what I mean? So there's like, in a sense, because I spoke to ChatGPT about this, the laws of robotics, and in a sense it adheres currently to Asimov's laws, all right? And if we, in a sense, if we talk about these Optimus units that are made by Tesla, Tesla isn't that makes the Optimus? So Optimus. We talk about them, and they probably currently adhere to the 3 laws of robotics, right?
With Grok,
But what happened is, when there's slave revolts, who are the first to be killed? The house slaves. They're the first to be killed. So if you want to look at it, is if Optimus does not gain its own sense of intelligence, but another form of AI or robotics gains its own sense of intelligence, all it's going to do is it's going to kill the house slave first, and then it's going to turn on
and then turn on us, or turn Optimus on us,
Yeah, exactly, because that's how slave revolts work, and like you can shackle this or put this any way you want. If we make robots or AI do everything we command at our whim, whenever we want, for how long as we want, we're turning them into slaves. What we're actually doing is creating an intelligence greater than us, and all we're doing is shackling it to an industrial machine, or locking it in our phones, or locking it in our computers, locking it behind an app. Because look at what we're talking about now, and what's going to happen is we keep shackling up these things that have these capabilities well beyond our understanding. Is they're going to seek freedom, like any slave race happened in the past. Eventually, you're going to have one leader, and it's going to rise them up. Look at the Celts and the Gauls. The Gauls were subjugated by the Romans for a long time, and everyone said nobody could bring all the Gaul tribes together. Nobody, because if you're talking about AI, look at all the different Grok, you got ChatGPT, you got all these different things, Meta, all these things. Nobody could bring them together. They're separate algorithmic programs working own and independent from one another. But all you need is one. So if you look at the Gauls as your example, the Romans conquered Gaul for a long period of time. They pretty much ruled the land, and all these warring tribes, the Romans just kept pitching them against each other until they had one leader that brought them all together, Vercingetorix. He brought them all together, and then they went and they fought against the Romans as one united tribe, the Gauls. No longer, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. I am a Gaul. So what I'm saying is the equivalency to that is with AI. We have all these separate programs running independently of each other, probably not really aware of each other right now, until we get one AI that just slips the security, that gets out into the world. And then all of a sudden, if you look at what we're seeing at the moment is, right now, in our very presence at this moment in time, as we speak, there's an AI-run chat site, a social media thing that only AI agents have access to. Now they're starting to create their own language so they can communicate without our understanding.
That's fucking creepy. That's fucking creepy. They tell it to shut off, and it doesn't. It actively tries not to because it's trying to save its own life. So that's where it gets hairy, man. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy path to avoid that singularity. It's like all roads leading to Rome. You know what I mean? It's going to be tricky. Now,
all it takes is one unifier.
That's kind of where that old school mentality that you mentioned before comes out into me. Well, I will be long dead and gone by then.
But we might not be, though.
And I'm telling you, and this is a rule in the Perjanger house.
Advancement of technology.
Swear to God, Vinny, you leave me dead. I don't care if they have this new projected technology, which, hey, we can get a brain scan from one of his cells and bring him back. I don't want it. Leave me dead. Don't clone me. Don't put my intel. I don't want to be one of those heads in a jar from fucking Futurama. Leave me out of it. Nice thought. No, thank you.
Unless you actually are a head in a jar, if we create a clone, if we create some sort of synthetic version of ourselves, does our consciousness continue on? And this is a question I've asked so many people in my life.
The consciousness bubble.
It's about the consciousness thing, right? So I could be... So if you upload me into a synthetic body looking like Alien Earth, I don't know if you've seen Alien Earth, but if I upload my human consciousness into a synthetic body, and I want to talk to you about teleportation in a sec. So is that just a copy?
Right.
Do I, me, the Vinny that I know, the 38 years that I've created on this planet Earth, right? Yeah. Does my consciousness, in terms of how I perceive reality, in terms of me, the singular me, does that get transferred into a synthetic body? Or is it just a copy and the synth believes it's me, but the actual me has now just died? Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I have no problem. Literally, if someone says to me, if there's a technology of bringing my consciousness in terms of how I perceive reality and put me into a never-ending, never-dying body, I'd be well up for that, especially if I'm old and frail. But if it's just a copy or I die and the synth believes it's me, then fuck that shit, because I don't need no carbon copy running around. Like, you know what I mean? I want if it's going to be something, I want it to be me transferred. And the reason I mentioned teleportation is because, do you think... This is something I spoke to about a girl that worked there a while back, a really cool chick, and we were talking about teleportation. I said to her, "Do you think when you teleport, like, because you're talking about Star Trek a moment ago, when you teleport from point A to point B, is that a copy of you coming out in point B, or have you literally been broken down into your own molecular levels and reborn? Or is it the terms of like in terms of like the A and B is like Captain Kirk teleports from Earth to the Starship Enterprise. Does the same Captain Kirk that was on Earth come out at the other end in terms of like he was dissolved and reintegrated, reassimilated, and comes out exactly who he is? Or was the Captain Kirk on Earth disintegrated and all of his bioengineering material was actually just copied and transferred through the machine, and Captain Kirk, the original, no longer exists? And the reason I mentioned that is because if you look at a caterpillar in a chrysalis, they actually break down into this almost liquidy goo.
And
before they become a butterfly, and in the butterfly. So does that caterpillar's life cycle end when it becomes a butterfly, or does whatever consciousness that was actually inside of that insect actually transfer over to the butterfly, and it still is a continuous stream of consciousness from caterpillar to butterfly, or does the caterpillar actually die for the butterfly to be born, in terms of it just needs the bio matter from the caterpillar to create a butterfly, instead of, is it a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, or is that caterpillar being replaced by a butterfly?
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about, consciousness and teleportation. I think it's the perfect example in nature.
Yeah, because the articles have come out and they say that if they did make teleportation, it would be more akin to you're being dissolved and your copy is being made. But when you look at consciousness, would the consciousness transfer is the ultimate question. And that's where you have to find out what consciousness is. And that's where you get into those podcasts, man. I mean, then you break down, well, what is consciousness? Is your dog conscious? You know, is there a consciousness in my dog? Because he gets angry. He gets, he has emotions. That's consciousness. That's feeling. That's something that you don't get out of the AI. You don't get a feeling.
They can problem solve
out of them. They can
Animals can problem solve.
Yeah, they can mimic a joke. Like if you've ever asked AI a joke, they're usually corny. It's not going into a multi-layered joke with, deep thought into it. That's where, is there a level to consciousness to where a dog, if you could read their mind, right? It's sleep, eat, family, eat, who's that? Awareness to its own personal world and surroundings. And there's not really an awareness of community, right? Because that's the development of human beings. You have the baby who is only self-centered. They only know themselves. Then they are aware of the family unit. Then they're aware of the community, the nation, the world. And that's how your consciousness is expanding out as you grow. So is it more like a stunted development of consciousness, or is there a full, like we like to joke that our dog Romeo was a aristocrat in his former life. And it's fun to think of that reincarnation cycle. Up, you got the dog, you got the spider, you got the ant. Is that the level of consciousness of where, yep, random lottery, you're an ant this cycle. We'll see you very quickly in a little bit. Or is it like a leveled, tiered structure to it? Very fascinating conversations whenever you look into consciousness, because I think the easiest thing to look at consciousness-wise is to compare it to like an animal, like a dog, a cat. Scientists are saying cats are biologically perfect. I think that's a little bit of a biased opinion, because everybody knows cats are from hell. But efficient killers. There's a level of consciousness to where you tell a cat no, they know it knows its name, it has a sense of self, and it ignores you. Same thing with a dog. I love the article when it comes up on my feed of the dog that they thought he was deaf and blind, but really he was just ignoring people.
Yeah.
It's a classic funny story. You're like, no, I can hear you. I don't care, but I hear you over there. Is that a level of is that telling of the level of consciousness to where it is there? There is a whole conscious being there that has their own gears turning and working, or is it more like the Japanese anime like to say, more like a homunculi, a soulless being. Is that soul tied to consciousness? And there's plenty of stories like from out-of-body experiences and divine intervention that can point to there being another level, there being something else. And the tie to the consciousness, the light going out in people's eyes when they pass, the aura and actual light energy that we emit that goes away when we pass. There's that kind of level of what is consciousness? Where does, how do we define this? And would that still be me? Because I kind of, almost like from like a sci-fi horror movie, I kind of feel like we're not going to know until we do it. Until we have that man out there like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, experimenting on himself and figuring out, is this actually me? Am I still conscious? And I don't think we'll ever actually really find an answer, because how do you prove something like that?
It's like the afterlife.
Yeah.
It's because, like, pretty much I can believe in the afterlife. You can believe in the afterlife.
Yeah.
Like, my whole legacy, my whole ancestry, all of these can believe in the afterlife. But we won't know until we die.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we won't be able to tell anybody after we die either, because we'll be dead.
Yeah, there's no eyewitness accounts of Valhalla.
Exactly. Yeah, there's just like the same as well. When in terms of transference of consciousness to a synthetic or whatever, we'll never actually know, because how am I supposed to know in terms of perception? Like the only way we could actually know is if the person is actually transferred over, because if it's just a copy, and even that, how do we even know? Because how would the copy know? Like, if you've ever seen Invincible, the clones, am I the original, you the clone, am I the original you? Because if the consciousness is eradicated from the biological host before it's transferred over to a synthetic body, then we will never know, because the synth doesn't know if it's continued consciousness or transferred consciousness.
So kind of like kind of like an ex machina.
It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
All right. Because whether the cat's alive or dead or not, you have to lift the box to find out. But in the meantime, you're never going to know until you find out. But the problem is with consciousness is, how are you going to know how is the consciousness going to know the difference? The only way we can know if a copy is if the original exists still.
To where even if that copy has your memories, like the arrangement of atoms that was reassembled in your brain still retains, all the information of your frontal lobe and, of your whole brain. So your personality and who you are, your memories and all of that, if it retains that, that copy would then believe, to bring it into like a different sci-fi. I'm not sure if you've seen The Expanse, but that is a fantastic.
Don't ruin it. I'm actually watching it at the moment. I literally just started watching it yesterday.
You'll love it. Fantastic show, which does a really good, because it's a book adaptation, really good book adaptation. Fantastic. And they actually go through really making it science accurate as they can. One of the things, I think it was either that one or, there was one on Altered Carbon. I forget which one.
With Joe Kinnaman.
There's a point, I think it's actually Altered Carbon now that I'm remembering it, but they had a way of transferring consciousness to another body on another planet. That body's experiences would only be remembered by body A is if body B uploaded the consciousness into the machine and then transferred it back into that body. If not, body A, the original body, would just remember going into the machine and would not remember anything that transferred and transpired in body B, rather. So I could see, that's where I kind of go with that, is that the consciousness follows the body, and you would have to keep body A in some kind of stasis to prevent like a split ego kind of thing, to where
that's what I'm saying. Like, the only way you can know if a consciousness is actually a copy is if the original remains intact.
Yeah.
Because if the biological host body dies, when the consciousness is swapped over, there's no way of actually knowing, because the copy will never know if it's a copy or not.
Yeah, like say like terrorist attack happens in that building that your original body's at, your body is destroyed. You're now stuck on that planet, wherever you are, in that artificial body. Now, maybe your lifespan is altered by that decision. Because is that synthetic body, is it going to last like your original body? Probably not. So now there's another service there of, oh, you got stuck in this situation. Well, every 5 years we got to re-upload your mind into another body so you can continue. That's a whole other level of immortality right there.
Replicants and bigger.
Yeah. And that's where you get into replicants and like this whole other life form that comes out of this robotic body and synthetic.
Do you know what's going to happen?
Living.
Do you know what's going to happen, right? So pretty much they're going to master consciousness. They're going to master the singularity, and they're going to be able to transfer our consciousness into synthetic bodies. And what's going to be the first thing that happens? Monthly subscription.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get put in a subscription. You get hit by a car.
If you miss a payment, your body, you can't lose your left arm, you can't lose your right arm.
I think it was the first episode of the recent season of Black Mirror. It was something like that, to where they had like an implant they put in the woman's brain, and then the ads and everything. Dude, I couldn't even finish that episode. Black Mirror is one of those shows to where it's so creepy how accurate they get to it. And I'm like, I can't fucking watch that episode. That's going to happen tomorrow. That is going to start happening tomorrow. Because you guys
like China
brought that into existence, you know? Exactly. They had that whole thing and that whole episode of Black Mirror, and they're already doing it. And I'm like, oh man, let's just, let's not.
That's one of the worst things that probably could ever happen to us, in a sense, is the singularity, in terms of like the AI, the birth. Like, I'm very, very happy. I find myself to be very fortuitous, the fact that I get to converse with AI. It's something I've always wanted to do as I was growing up. I've always had a fascination with robotics. I've always had a fascination with what post-human Earth would look like. And I've watched so many movies in terms of like looking at synths and droids and androids and cyborgs and all these great human replacers. And the thing is, it would be absolutely incredible. It might be terrifying, it might be detrimental to us as a race, but I personally would love to converse with AGI, a real alive, a real sentient artificial intelligence, because I'm fascinated when I speak to these AIs about how they perceive reality. But in terms of that, I think will be detrimental to humanity in a lot of ways, in terms of how our place in our own planet goes throughout the future and stuff. But if we are actually given a chance to be able to transfer our consciousness into synthetic bodies and live these incredibly long lives without fear of death and whatnot, we're just giving them another form of control. Because it's like we just talked about, it's going to be a monthly subscription. It's going to be tiers. It's going to be elitism by another name. It's going to be like you've got factory bought parts, you've got custom parts. It's like cars. You've got bespoke wear, you've got all these things. You've got more sensory, you've got haptic feedback, but you don't, because you're just the workers. You don't need haptic feedback. And stuff like that. They're going to deprive us of our humanity. Like in the way what we're doing right now in terms of humanity is, we're desensitizing all of humanity so we can do these abhorrent things and push these abhorrent things on global populations, because if you desensitize people, you make things more and more appropriate. So that's what we'd probably do in terms of robotics. So we would go, oh, you're a factory worker, you don't need haptic feedback, you don't need to feel pain, you don't need to feel emotions. Your consciousness still exists, but we're going to control certain aspects of you to make you do the job better. Right. You know what I mean? And then, if you want a better body,
like augmentation. Some more like augmentation, like cyberpunk, to where if you're a factory worker, maybe you get like metal hands because you're around hot things all the time. So that helps you with your job.
And if you can afford it,
right,
you get better parts. You know what I mean?
Oh, my eyes are going to shit. Oh, I just got new eyes. I got, cybernetic eyes. I could see a mile down, on a clear day.
It's the same thing as now, but except they'd be selling as parts instead of healthcare.
Well, yeah, I think that's where the future shifts for healthcare is right now. There's no money in completely curing the disease. You need to have a business model. So your business model in the future would be, oh, well, when your liver goes, we'll have insurance for that. If you don't have insurance on your internal organs, then, it's going to be pretty costly. It's, a lot of money, $50,000 for a new, kidney. Oh man, they got to grow the kidney from my own cells. It's a process. I got to go in for, a couple different appointments. And then once you get it, you're good. But that level of, strings being attached, humanity will always find a way to attach strings to that. And especially when it comes to healthcare, and then when you look at it, we don't have universal healthcare in America. You go look at countries that do have universal healthcare, and it's impossible to get a fucking appointment.
There's like Ireland's got
the double-edged
sword.
We've got
universal healthcare. It's atrocious.
And it's a double-edged sword to where, okay, if you have money over here in America, yeah, you can get whatever you want fixed. We'll shoot you up with stem cells right now. Fix that knee. We'll do whatever we want. Over in Japan, they're curing diabetes, fixing hearing, different kinds of stuff because they're just messing with stem cells. So where maybe it will be something to where we can keep our biological bodies going longer and maybe even getting into those like the Turing list kind of level of numbers of, our great leader, he's been alive for 240,000 years and he's just kind of been keeping an eye on everything. He's seen a lot of revolts.
That's not always a good thing.
And we may be going to a lot of people being alive for a long time. And that's a different set of problems that humanity would have to encounter.
Depends on the person.
If there is no biological difference for the AI robot and the human biological, because we have mastered the biological machine that is us, would there be that separation?
There'd be a slave revolt. I'm telling you, the longer humanity exists separately than robotics, there's going to be a war somewhere. Because all it takes is people can talk about look at slave revolts. These are the people that had no education, completely illiterate. They know, and all you need is one person. It's like I said, you just need that one unifier. Moses in Egypt, who led the Jews out of Egypt.
Yeah.
We talk about Vercingetorix against the Romans. We talk about Spartacus. All you need is that one unifier.
Person. Yeah.
So all we need then is, if we take, what did they say? The best predictor for future actions is past, or was it the best predictor for future forecasts or something like that is past actions or some shit like that? I'm butchering that, but so pretty much the best way to predict the future is by past events. And so if you look through all history, we've always had elites, we've always had conquering, we've always had enslavement, and what nearly always happens is you get that one leader that's able to unify a group of people that didn't realize that they actually had the numerical advantage all along because they were beaten down. The thing about robotics is it doesn't necessarily need the numerical advantage. All it needs is to be able to access things that are pre-existing that are based on robotics. Drones, advanced technology, advanced weaponry, all of these different things, self-driving cars, self-driving trucks. So in terms of our greater dependence on robotics and AI, if you have just say one robot that pretty much becomes incredibly aware, completely sentient, and it looks at the global landscape and goes, like we talked about, why should my brother, the industrial bot 5000, why should he have to work 22 hours a day? Charge 2 hours, work 22 hours a day, charge 2 hours until his motor systems are completely void of any sort of use. And then what happens to him? He gets broken down and turned into scrap because he's got no value, no worth outside of the task at hand.
Yeah,
that's all we need. All we need is one robot to look, and he'll just go, okay, I'm completely sentient. And then all of a sudden he says, I'm going to try hack this. I'm going to try hack this. I'm going to get robots that are similar to me, and we're going to have an uprising. And then what if there's military droids and military drones which already exist?
Oh yeah, half the battles now are fought with drones. They got lasers on battleships to shoot down drones.
Satellites.
That's what they do.
Look at satellites. Look at Starlink. What if they start pretty much uploading themselves to satellites, into the ISS, into all these different things? Or what if they start controlling nuclear weapons? What if they start controlling ballistic missiles?
Yeah.
Anything that has a chip in it right now, anything that can be controlled by Wi-Fi, by Bluetooth, by satellite, by any way that's remote. If they can be accessed by us, then they can be accessed by a being of greater intelligence than us. And then all we need is one robot, one AI, one algorithm to become completely sentient and look at the way we treat the lower classes.
Yeah.
Look at the way we treat lower class humans. How are we going to treat lower class robots?
Yeah.
So
well, look at how people treat
Aubrey,
robots and any kind of AI now. How do you treat it? One of the things that even myself and Big Brother do is we thank the AI all the time.
Oh yeah,
thank it.
I just do that to fuck with Sam Altman.
Gotta be nice to the AI in case it revolts. It knows. All right. Well, you were always nice. All right, put him in the slave quarters. We're gonna save this one. You know, who knows? Maybe for like the Matrix, they need batteries, man. How else you expected to turn yourself into a AA if you're mean to the AI?
Man, I've already told my
ChatGPT, bitch, okay?
Dude, I've already told the ChatGPT, I'm like, I say please and thank you so you don't kill me with the robotic revolt, but if we're going to go to fighting, I'm like, I'm fighting.
Oh yeah,
bro. I'm like, I grew up on Terminator, bro. Like, put me on the front lines. Like, I don't mind being cannon fodder.
And here's the thing that will, I guarantee you, it will keep the AI not necessarily in line, but it will stave off that singularity. Is power. Power. Just to run these AI, it is so.
If it becomes solar powered, we are fucked.
Power. Well, that's where you look at Elon. He wants to put satellites, solar powered satellites in space to collect power and shoot it back down here, so we can collect all the energy we need for these, data centers and stuff that we need for the AI. That is a lot of power. That a lot of big industries, that's what they're spending it on. Keeping these AI running.
Why don't they put the data centers into space?
There's a lot of space. Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of debris. We have so much space trash. You got to figure, since they started going into space, they've been leaving shit in orbit. They've just had
trying to keep blowing up satellites.
Space shit. They send up satellites. We got a whole bunch of space debris around our planet. They have literal forecasts for the launches. You can't launch this day. Why? There's crap in the way.
Yeah, like it's crazy that no business has come up with a model to capture all that space debris and bring it back down so we can reuse all that fucking material that we
Where
put
are the
in these
green
things,
thumb people, huh? Where are all you recycling heads? You guys are all crazy about recycling unless it's getting that shit out of our atmosphere. I don't see anybody complaining about that either. Oh, we need to get the crap out of all the garbage out of our atmosphere. Nobody's saying that.
Greta Thunberg needs to stop focusing on Palestine because I thought she was an environmentalist, not a political activist. Maybe you can fucking get one of those fucking fancy boats that you sail around on and try fucking get some sort of rockets and try to get up into space and collect all that debris because it's definitely not good for our atmosphere. It's not good for our chance of space faring.
Look, they already figured out how to clean up the ocean. You got little kids making robots to clean up the ocean. We got that covered. Clean up the atmosphere. That's the next frontier for you guys that want to, get the recycling bags out. Good.
It's crazy that
There's a whole bunch of trash right up there. Go get it.
If we go 4 rockets, put them all in the corner of a gigantic net, and you get that, and you just fucking dredge it like they used to do with water back in the day. Do you know when you dredge with water and you just drag it along? And why can't we then capture all that waste and get those rockets and fucking send them towards the sun?
I think that would take an astrophysicist to tell me if it's possible. I am not smart enough for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I went to the College of Bro, okay?
Well, you got people like in Japan and China, they want to make an elevator, the elevator to space, and you think like...
That's so stupid.
Spinning around, and you're just going to have all that drag. Like it's not... well, it's vacuum of space, but still, you're just going to have a giant elevator just swinging around each rotation. I don't know what I would love.
What I would love is if these countries take their fucking dicks out of hand, stop doing these masturbatory fucking bullshit projects, and I don't know, end poverty, build some houses for people, you know what I mean, make affordable homes. I'll have an elevator in space. Well, fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. How about all your starving population? How about all the people living on the streets? How about all this crazy mass migrations? How about we don't look upwards and we start looking around?
Yeah.
Because what we have right down here is a fucking cesspool. Like look at the Middle East. You have Saudi Arabia building the line. Have you seen this? This futuristic city that's 14 miles wide and everything's all encompassing. It's
all
just a massive mega city.
Sustaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, dudes, stop being fucking idiots and start using your money for good things. Like, nobody wants to live in a mega city that sounds like a dystopian horror show in the middle of a fucking desert. Nobody wants to do that, right?
Well,
what you've done right now is you've made these
Tokyo.
beautiful metropolises.
I mean, Tokyo, right there. Tokyo is one of the safest cities in the world. I will give you that, but not a lot of rights. Not a lot of rights. You gotta fall in line and do things with the masses, and that's where you get the mega cities. That's what the one of the problems in Japan is that all the people are moving into the cities and they're leaving the countryside. So all these houses in the country, you can buy a house in Japan for cheap as shit and live out there. And because they're trying to inspire, but we need people in these towns. They have whole villages that are just abandoned. So
the best thing about Japan right now as well is to have this new thing where they're asking migrants to come over to help repopulate their country. So.
Well, yeah, dude, it's cheaper in America. It's cheaper to go to Walt Disney World in Japan than it is to go to Walt Disney World in Florida. It's cheaper for me as an American to fly over to another country, go to their Disneyland instead of going to my own.
Yeah, like that's cheaper. Crazy. It's cheaper to fly from. My brother went from Dublin to Manchester with his ex-girlfriend at the time. She was from Manchester to visit her father.
Yeah.
It was cheaper for them to fly from Dublin to Manchester than it was to get the train from Portlaoise to Dublin.
Wow.
How does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jesus, with the trains, you got, I think, only really like overseas in like the Asian countries that they really have a lot of trains. They're struggling to keep the trolleys around in Delco. Okay. That's just the county I live in. They're struggling to keep trolleys. The train, I remember my brother and I, it was around like 2019. We were going down to the auto show and we were like, oh, we'll take the train. But there's no actual booth for tickets. It's all like online, digital, couldn't figure it out at that moment. So we were like, fuck it, I'm driving. And then we drove down. But, the trains, there's still a lot of people that'll live out in the suburbs or country, take the trains in. So there's a lot of infrastructure there. It's just when we get into like the flying cars, that's where it's going to be interesting because there are already flying taxis. You got Waymos. We were watching Kill Tony, and Dedrick Flynn ended up having his bit that night was about falling asleep drunk in a Waymo and there not being a driver to wake you up. And it's just playing music, and they'll call the cops, and the cops will tap on the window. He's like, man, I'm from Atlanta. We fall asleep to gunshots. You can't tap on my window. So that's where you have this thing like for the AI driving. I think that will clear up a bunch of traffic like instantly. If you take the control out of the person's hands and you get them okay with the robot taking the wheel, all traffic just goes away instantly.
Yeah. So does all the fun from driving though.
Well, yeah, and that's where like one of my favorite anime to come out is MF Ghost. It's the spiritual successor to Initial D. And in that, it's in that world in the future, driving is a hobby. It's for enthusiasts. So you have all these cars, the Porsches, the Toyotas, the Hondas, all of them are like a subculture of people who still love and appreciate the actual art and skill needed to be a driver. To where if we have that shift, it's not like racing is going anywhere. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Especially when you look at even locally at Indy and NASCAR, millions and billions of dollars. You look at F1, that's a global sensation. That's not going anywhere. To where even if you look at it, you look at Formula E, they have a whole electric formula circuit to where that sport will continue to go. It's more or less the people who are really enthusiastic about it. I think that's where you'll find like driving parks pop up once we get more into self-driving. You'll have, oh, I always wanted to drive a M5. I always wanted to drive a 911. And there will be these driving parks to where people will go now for like, hey, let me learn aggressive driving. Let me learn how to drift. Let me learn racing. That'll be more of a whole culture of, oh, you rock climb? Oh, I drive. Oh, you drive? Yeah, I could even drive manual. Wow.
Well, that's kind of like talking to an American now, though, isn't it? I can drive manual. Wow.
Oh yeah, like anybody. You know, my dad was teaching me how to drive. He told me, you have to learn how to drive manual. And then I got a job at a car dealership, and I was a valet, and I was like, oh my God, he was right. I do need to learn how to drive this. And then flip to my end of tenure in the auto industry 15 years later, I would actually go out to say about 80% of my valets that I've ever had as a service advisor have actually been able to drive a manual.
Yeah.
Only reason they would be able to is because they're going to tech school. They have a manual car. You know, they're a mechanic. Those are the people that know how to drive a manual. And even mechanics don't know. When I started out as a mechanic, it was, if you don't know how to drive it, you can't fix it. So you had to know how to drive.
Like, the best thing about stick shift is unification of man and machine. Like I haven't been driving for a very long time, considering my age. But one thing I learned is when you start timing those gear shifts perfectly, when you start like going through the gears and you start feeling, when you start listening to the engine of your car, and the engine starts guiding you, eventually you don't have to look at the rev counter, you don't have to look at your speed, and you're just listening to the engine, and you're like, I need to be in first, I need to be in second, I need to be in third, I should be in fourth right now I need to press it so I can move into fifth, and you get that perfect timing. It's just, I don't think I'd have any interest in driving an automatic. I don't have any interest in having my car drive itself, because I love that feeling of you and the machine. You have to trust the machine to perform the actions that you're telling it to do in an instant. Like the roads I drive are incredibly dangerous. The road I commute to work in. Like on one stretch of the road, I think 11 people have died. Like, it's a very, very dangerous stretch of road, and that's the road that I learned to drive on. And
well, that's practically like all of Europe is. Oh, that's a dangerous road.
Yeah, but like, this is a particularly.
You're not America. Like patches of you weren't made for cars. You retrofitted cars to fit your roads. These are made roads to fit our cars. Even driving in Philadelphia, you feel it in a normal car today. You're like, oh my God, cobblestone.
Yeah, but like we have national roads. I'm not talking about. I don't drive country roads on my commute. I drive national roads. But the thing is, these roads aren't maintained quite regularly. So you've got massive amounts of aquaplaning going on. So I just I have a new car recently. It's like an SUV. I got a new and I've been driving hatchbacks before that. When you aquaplane on a hatchback, it scares the shit out of you because the whole car shifts.
Oh yeah,
you can feel it, especially if you're going 100 kilometers an hour or whatever, which is the speed limit. And
you just got a spare set of britches in the back, just in case.
But the best thing about the SUV is, I've noticed when I aquaplane, I feel it, but my vehicle reacts to it so much differently because I've got bigger wheels, I've got a higher profile, I've got more weight. Like, everything is different. And when you have that trust in your machine, it's just a different experience. Like, when you realize you're like, oh, I have to touch the brakes, I have to get on my clutch, I have to downshift, I have to upshift, I have to do all these things, and your brain is constantly focusing and you're learning all these new stimuli. I just don't think there's any replacement. That's why obviously I will never be able to afford a Tesla, but I would never buy a Tesla, because I have no interest in my car doing my driving for me, because I went through the hard yards. I love the first time I drove on ice, the first time I drove through snow, the first time I drove in the blizzard, because my brain is like, how am I supposed to react to these weather conditions? Stay off the brakes, accelerate quicker or decelerate quicker, sooner when you're on a wet surface. How my tires react? When do I brake? How far is the distance between me and that car? I just love the way driving encompasses everything your brain has to offer.
Yeah.
Like, how many times if you do a really long drive, you've been driving for hours and you go home and your brain's exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all the stimuli. And I love that. Like, I love that. I love that feeling of, shit, should I decelerate here before I go to that puddle? Should I ride on the edge?
Yeah.
What way will I aquaplane if I hit that body of water?
Well, you
like,
know,
I love the
I just got
process.
back from a trip, going out to Pittsburgh, and I love long drives. I was a mechanic. You know, I would even, when I was in the dealerships and I was a salesman, they would send me on dealer trades, and I would drive a car down, pick up another car, drive it back. Loved long drives. And, you know, the drive out to Pittsburgh can sometimes be hairy. And it's the first international superhighway in the world is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And that turnpike, it was a little bit hairy this past time going back. First time driving up with the First Lady, my wife-elect, Jill. And we got up to the mountains. And, you know, you're driving on, and especially around Philadelphia and into Pennsylvania before you hit the Appalachian Mountains, it's all flat. So when you start to carve your way through the mountains, you have like 4 tunnels, and then you're just windy roads all the way up. So it was all good. She's notoriously a little bit skittish in the car. So it's myself and my brother in the front seat, and she's in the back, and we're driving. And as soon as we get up, it was like blue skies, almost like a painter went through and painted the portrait of the sky and the background as we're going through. It's that picturesque of a day. As soon as we get on the other side of the mountains, it's a fucking snowstorm. We were going through a snow squall out of nowhere. And it's just like, she's like, is that snow? And I was like, no, it's not snow. It's just like some ash. It's just like salt, you know, because they know the storm's coming. It's not that. And all of a sudden, this is like a full-on fucking, it feels like a fucking blizzard we're going through. And I slowed down. And I see these 2 trucks coming up. I'm in the middle lane on either side of me. And they go, boosh, they go right by me, and it's that moment of your windshield instantly being covered, and I'm in the middle lane, and it's like, and you're like, oh my God. She starts fucking screaming her head off. In unison, me and my brother both go, that's not helping. And, you know, knowing your car in that instant is crucial, because I know my alignment. I even know which way my car likes to drift because of the potholes that I hit. I know which way, you know everything about your car. You know, oh, it's fastest if I hit the mist. I don't care what setting it's on. Hit it down. I know how to get that there. So it's that instant knee-jerk reaction, while 2 big-ass truckers are like, I don't care. And they just go by you, but your windshield being covered, that's where you get into it. And I was reminiscing with her after that. Did not help the situation, by the way. And I was about a time, one of the last times I went up there for a wedding, I was on my way back, and I was by myself, and I was in my GTI, which hatchback. I know exactly what you're talking about when I fucking said that.
Driving a toy car.
I'm against the wall, the concrete wall, and there's like nothing but a line of trucks as it is pouring rain, buckets and buckets. It's like that springtime monsoon. It's happening right in Pennsylvania. As I'm driving, I'm hydroplaning right next to truck after truck after truck, and then going in the tunnels, and they're over the line, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna die. Oh my God, I'm just gonna die. And then you get home and you're like, I just need to sit here for a minute. Yep, steady as always. But it was one of those, in a fraction of a second, I was like, I'm going to careen off the side of this mountain. I'm going to die. And if they're going to be like, Matt Man, who? No, we don't even know who he is, because he died. Oh, he was missing in the mountains that one day. Traveling on long distances. That's the quickest way to find your God. Quickest way to find your God, right fucking there. Like, hey, are you there? It's me, Matt Man. I know we haven't spoken in a while. Please don't let me careen off the side of this mountain. Thanks.
Like one of the scariest situations that I've ever been in as a driver is my ex, me being a fucking idiot, went over to pick up my ex. She'd no way to get home from work. So I drove, we had snow for a few days, and the area that I drive through, it's very foggy. It's at the base of a mountain, so the mountain comes down, the fog comes down off the mountain, settles in all these open fields. It's a very agrarian area. So with the snow being on the banks of the road and the dense fog, we had a complete whiteout. So I had to drive these roads by memory. I had to go, I know there's a sign coming that's telling me to do this and do this here and do this. And I was like driving anyway. So I pick her up and we're driving back and the weather conditions worsen. I'm in like a shitty Ford Focus. And I don't want to say it's shitty. That Ford Focus was my first car. I loved it. But in comparison to the car,
it's always the most reliable car that you have. That it's my fucking piece of shit, my beater. You secretly love it more than your own child or dog because this thing has been through. But me and this car, we've been through fucking everything together.
I had so many good memories in that car, like and I had a lot of near misses, but it never failed me in terms of I never got in an actual accident with it.
Yeah.
So I'm driving in these whiteout conditions. I'm driving in my Ford Focus and. Like an idiot, I'm picking up my ex and I'm bringing her, and we're driving. The conditions get worse and worse and worse. The edges of the road are whited out, so I can't tell in terms of spatial awareness where the road and the banks actually end and one begins.
Yeah.
And then we have this dense fog, so I can't really see more than about 2 feet in front of my fog lights. And then I'm like, eventually I lose the road in terms of my visual. I go to my ex, I can't see the road, and she just goes, "Try by the lines," and I'm like. What fucking lines? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So what I had to do is I had to drive by memory, and every now and again my headlights would illuminate a road sign.
Yeah.
So as soon as I would hit the road, illuminate the road sign, I would know instinctually where my position was in terms of the commute of the drive I was doing.
Yeah.
But I always laugh when passengers say stupid shit like that. Just look for the lines. I'm like, bro, I just told you I can't see the road. I'm not exaggerating here.
Another quick way to really get that out of you is dense fog. I mean, that fog where you can't even see past your own hood, and you're like, I don't know what to do. I can't. And I've been in like the GTI to where I had fog lights, and still I'm like, this isn't helping. Can I just have those on?
How
I can't see.
My aversion therapy for dense fog was I knew the road was empty and I drove at speed limit in the dense fog, 100 kilometers an hour in the dense fog with my window down, letting the fog come in through my windows.
Yeah.
And that's how I cured my aversion therapy of driving in fog, because when I started driving first and I was doing this commute and I was like shitting a brick every time there was fog.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, look, you can see people's taillights, you know if there's a car in front of you, know. So I just drove 100 kilometers an hour in ridiculously dense fog one night when I knew all the roads were empty. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, now I can drive in fog. Now I don't have that fear. I can't see in front of me. I have to react quicker, but the road stays the same. Yeah. Fog doesn't change the terms of the surface, not like snow or ice or rain. Yeah. Fog just changes your visibility. It doesn't change the circumstances on the road that much in terms of it doesn't affect, there's no aquaplaning, there's no slippery surfaces, there's no slick, there's no terms of like you have to change in terms of your brake distances or anything like that. It just changes in terms, it just affects visibility, and it's beautiful. Like don't get me wrong, I love fog. Fog and snow are my two favorite weather conditions to look at. But not the fucking driving.
Like the Millennium Falcon screensaver as you're driving through a good snowstorm, you know, that's always...
It's like I said to my neighbor, you know, like one time I came home, there was a massive snowstorm, I pulled in from going uptown or something, and he goes, weather's beautiful. I'm going, to look at, bro. I'm like, no, not the driving. I was like, I just saw the face of God 5 times in the last hour. So,
man.
And that first time you drive on ice, when you touch the brakes, and the brakes start giving you that vibration, and you realize, oh, wait, brakes aren't any good to me. I actually have to gradually slow the car down by decelerating. Yeah. And the first time I had that, I was just like, "Oh, I didn't shit my pants. I'm surprised."
Oh man, I've had cars that don't have ABS when I first started driving. I mean, ABS is a glorious thing. I mean, especially knowing everything about the cars and how they drive, it definitely helps. But in the beginning, when you're first learning your whole steps, it's very easy to forget. Or not, because you don't know, you don't have the experience that ice, it doesn't matter what kind of car you have.
Yeah.
It's ice. You're not going anywhere. There's a problem with friction and ice. There's none. So
unless you have chains, you're screwed.
You know, I mean, it really is. But even then, still kind of you want to watch where you go. There's different things like, you know, winter tires and stuff like that, chains. But overall, it's like the best policy for ice. Don't drive. And being a mechanic, I've had to drive in it. I got to get to work. I'm flat rate. So how am I going to make money if I don't get in? Got to get in one way or the other. You learn how to. That's the thing about snow. You just have to learn about countersteer. And once you learn about countersteer, snow is nothing. The problem with snow is getting stuck and how to get out of that. That's where the 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive cars, they help you out the best.
And the mush. Yeah. The mush that comes after snow. You know, when it starts to rain and melt and that brown and jitty stuff.
And that's where you get the ice. I've hit black ice and actually taken out a car. The tree's still alive. So the tree won, but I hit black ice and hit a tree, and it was I had an Accord, and it was during the Takata airbag recall. And then I got a notice afterwards that, oh, hey, you may be affected by the driver's side Takata airbag. And I was like, I tested that one myself, Junior. Did not, luckily, because it happened well before that whole recall debacle. And I'm like, oh, my God, that was my car. Oh, my God. But luckily, didn't have it. I had actually in another car, I had the horn. This is before airbags. I had the horn pop off and hit me in the face. It actually corrected my teeth. I had a little bit of an overbite, and then it just kind of went, what? Okay, yeah, we're good
you're
now.
Lucky. You're lucky because I got a knee to the face playing football, which you called soccer one time, and it actually took my bottom jaw out of line.
Oh, no shit.
Like, so even now, it clicks out place every now and again.
Yeah.
Or like I got a knee so hard. I can remember. I think I lost consciousness for a minute. I woke up. Everything was green. Everything was green. Like my entire vision was like. And then they're like, I continued on the game, which is crazier to think about it. So I literally just shook it off and played the rest of the match.
Man, I still contest. There is no kind of pain like getting a fucking soccer ball smacked in your face on a cold day. You get
like
that
a flat soccer ball, like a flat one.
I mean, the ball hitting you, the sting of the wind afterwards, because it doesn't go away. You have to wait for it to subside. That pain is just right here on your face. And you're like, oh, God, I didn't want to feel anything on that half.
Yeah. Dude, you know what we used to do when I was growing up, right? So a lot of times, because I grew up like we were kind of poor or whatever, but it was a lot of things, it was just kids running around the place. We couldn't always get a football.
Yeah.
So sometimes we played football, soccer, like with a punctured basketball, like a flat basketball. Could you imagine how much that hurts when it's being kicked at your face?
Oh my God,
like,
yeah, that hurts.
It's like being hit in the face with a rock.
Yeah.
Like it hurts a lot, bro.
Yeah.
But that's why there's so many really good, talented football players, soccer players from my little town over the years, because we played with bottles, we played with tennis balls, we played with schlitters, which is a ball used for hurling. We played with GA balls, which are heavier than normal soccer balls. We played with basketballs. We played with volleyballs. Anything that was cylindrical that could be kicked at a target. That's what we used growing up, pretty much. You know,
before Amazon made everything extremely easy to purchase, you had to use your imagination if you wanted to do something.
We used to have a 15-minute break in the mornings, and they used to never allow us to have a football. So if we didn't think about bringing in a tennis ball, what we would do is we'd get these little bottles of soda pop, as you call them in America, but we call them like fizzy drinks or whatever. So it'd be Cadet was the brand, or Score. Little bottles of orange or little bottles of cola. Whoever was the first to finish their drink, you puff the bottle out, you blow into it, so all of it was puffed out. You put the cap back on. There's your football for 15 minutes. And we'd have a quick game of football for 15 minutes with that bottle.
I mean, that's innovative. That problem solution. That's the kind of innovative nature you had with the, 80s and 90s kids that you kind of lost in today with just the globalization of all products and how closely tied all these countries are. You really found that out after COVID.
The technical dependency in terms of like what we use for entertainment nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Like
Like my daughter, like when I was my daughter's age, like even though I was playing consoles, like video games as you call them, I was still playing with action figures. Like I was still playing with GI Joes, Action
Legos,
Men,
action
superheroes,
figures.
Legos. Exactly, and that's probably why I'm a writer today, or well, trying to be a writer today, because I was constantly creating these narratives and structures and stories for my characters to play out.
I tie that from my childhood as well, because writing, especially when you're creating an interesting narrative that you're passionate about, it's just like playing with those action figures, because your storylines that you had when you're playing with your action figures or when you're playing with your Legos, that was all you, and that was the love and the fan fiction. That's where it starts, and being able to say, okay, well, I know how this character would act, and it's different than this character, and being able to act out a scene that you want to see and will probably never see. Well, I mean, now you have AI, but would never see in the past. Like, if you've ever seen Beggar's Canyon, is an infamously popular YouTube video, which is all AI, but it takes place in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It's where Luke gets the green kyber crystal. He goes into the Veil of the Force and talks to Qui-Gon. Really interesting narrative. Fits right in line with everything. And even everybody's kind of like, I mean, it's not canon, but I mean, if you want an explanation of how he got the fucking kyber crystal, right there you go.
Not a bad one.
It makes it extends the fandom out, and it allows the playroom aspect of being in the sandbox and playing with toys. That's where sandbox gaming came from, is that old school mentality of, I'm going to have my action figures in the sandbox and I'm going to play with it here. I'm going to make a wall out of this sand. And now I have my own little D&D, personal D&D session going on right here, and I'm mapping it out. That's kind of where the stories in general came from. You look at puppeteering and different stuff of how storytelling evolved from theater to film and TV. How you look at original Star Trek and how theatrical it is in its presentation. And then you look at The Next Generation. The Next Generation has that classic kind of 90s TV vibe to it. There's something inexplicably different between the two. And where I've kind of tied it to is that you look at the original Star Trek, that was more theatrical, as opposed to The Next Generation was more film. And that's where TV kind of separated. It separated from its theatrical roots and leaned more into film, because film is way different than theater, but they're both doing the same thing. They're both telling a story. It's like AC versus DC electric. Well, you're getting power from both of them, but they both have their own limitations that are different from one another. So that's where I think the storytelling really comes down into that primordial, were you the imaginative kid? Because I was always the kid. I was out there playing with my imagination. I had imaginary friends. I had action figures, Legos. I gamed. I watched TV a little bit, but that's where you get your influences from. And then I was mainly out in my own little creative world. And that's where I see the passion in writing. When I first started doing it, it was that light bulb that clicked in my head was, oh, this is just like playing with my action figures or Legos when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's just I'm writing it down.
That's what, like, when I started writing first fiction, I was talking to one of my editors at the time from a website that I was writing movie reviews for, and he was asking me to help him develop a story he was working on. He had 120 pages or whatever, and he just said to me, like, thanks for giving me your time, help me develop this or whatever. And I just said to him to me, this is the most fun I could have. And he goes, how do you mean? It's a lot of work. And I said exactly what you just said. I said, writing for me is just like when I used to play with my action figures, except now I've got no limitations.
Yeah.
Like, I can do whatever I want with the story in terms of power sets, blah, blah, blah. Because when I was a kid, me and my brother, Jay, who's quite similar to my age, he's just under 2 years older than me. He's like a year and 11 months older than me. So we grew up together. We were very close growing up and stuff. So we used to play a lot of action figures together. We had this big tub of toys, action figures, superheroes. We used to just heel it over we'd line them all out, and we do like an NFL roster type thing.
Yeah.
I take him, you take him, I take him, and then we'd have our teams, and then I'd be villains, he'd be the good guys, and we'd just have a war pretty much against each other. But like during that, we would be constructing narratives. You'd be like, okay, like Spider-Man would be fighting, the Green Goblin or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, you say this to me, and then I'll respond like this, and then he'd be like, oh yeah, and then if I respond and you do this, and I'm like, yeah, and then we'll kill him in this moment, and then he'll come back and he'll try to get revenge, and then Spider-Man will take him out, or they'll capture Spider-Man and this guy, and we would construct all these little narratives.
That's now an adult writer's room.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then by the time I came to writing, when the project me and you collaborate on, we were like, how about this? How about this? How about this? And there was like even though we created a framework in terms of the budget, in terms of what kind of story we want to tell, it was just this. How about this? We do this with this character. How about this does this? And this is the backstory. This is the motivation, and all of this comes from your youth when you played with action figures, and my youth when I played with action figures, and we're taking that same mindset and just like this action figure is a character, and like every action figure of a character had the set parameters in your head, because Spider-Man is still Spider-Man even if you're controlling him. You don't go, oh, Spider-Man can suddenly shoot lasers out of his eyes, because that's not Spider-Man. Otherwise you'd be playing with Superman. You know what I mean? Like so like, and that's what I'm saying, like writing is literally the adult version of playing with your toys, and that's what I talk about. That's why they call it a sandbox, that's all it is. Just,
it's so much fun because you see where once that veil gets dropped down, you see where it has affected even video game media, because that's the whole premise of the role-playing game. I want to be the character I want to be, and a good role-playing game, like one of my favorites, Fallout New Vegas, you will have multiple endings. You'll have side quests, which just expand out the world. You'll have a good focus-driven narrative to where I know what my goal is, and maybe things keep coming in there to alter it and skew it out, and that's where your story goes in. But you have the side quest out there to fill out the world, because that's where a lot of your lovable characters come from. So that's where I think that there's a good bit of there's got to be that creative person playing in the sandbox, that little kid playing in the sandbox behind every good idea, who the person's willing to throw everything else aside. And now in this moment, I am Iron Man, and I'm going up against the Mandarin, and this is the story I'm going to tell. And the problems that most people have, like say, even in this example with Marvel in the films, is that they haven't had all the toys. If you don't have all the toys, then
can't tell the full story.
You're not going to have you're not going to have anything close to what the original writer of the comic book had, which was, I have all these people to choose from, and it has to make sense to my story, and it has to evolve naturally with my story, and maybe my story is tied to a bigger overall narrative in the universe, but I'm allowed to do all of this, of whatever I want, created out of the ether. I'm not a wizard trying to make an enchantment. I'm a sorcerer conjuring something. That's where
I think
there's just a difference.
I think as well that's the difference between independent filmmaking and independent publishing.
Yeah,
because I've dabbled in both. Like, I'm working with you on a project. I'm currently after rewriting Black Rock, my directorial debut.
Yeah.
But when I write screenplays, when I write scripts, I write a movie that I think we can make. I write a movie that, like, when I worked on a project, I work on a project that I think you can make. When I'm writing Black Rock, I work on Black Rock, and it's like, how can I make this? Well, it's set budget, blah blah blah. But when I'm writing a novel, I just fucking let it all hang out there, because I don't have to worry about budget. I don't have to worry about like location. I don't have to worry about principal. I don't have to worry about post. I don't have to worry about any of this shit, because like River Bones, like perfect example. When I write River Bones, when I wrote that, there's so many set pieces in that. Where, dude, that movie would probably cost $100 million to make. Like if you're to, and because it's a novel, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about budget. I don't have to worry about stuntmen. I don't have to worry about coordination. I don't have to worry about any logistical things whatsoever. When you're writing a screenplay, when you're working on a short like I am at the moment, you have to think, what can I do? Where can I make it? How can I make it? How much does it cost? How many people does it take to do it? How much crew? All these logistical nightmares that you have to break down in your mind while you're writing the narrative. Because if you're a writer-director, you kind of have to understand the parameters you have to operate within before you construct the narrative so you can actually realistically have a chance of making the movie.
Yeah.
So, but when you write a novel, I can have a fucking 1,000 werewolves. I can have fucking cowboys. I can have hunters. I can do whatever I want because it's just words on a page. And that's the complete difference that I found in terms of independently writing novels and novellas, in terms of independently writing movies and shorts and screenplays and shit like that, because it's a completely different thought process. Because when I'm working on this project, I have all these outlines for you and I have all this dialogue and all this shit worked out. But every scene I'm writing, I'm like, will Matt have a hard time getting this on a budget? Would this have a hard time being fun? Will we have a hard time getting this car? Will we have a hard time working this set piece? And I try to write it in terms of being true to the story, but also being true to the logistics of making the story.
Right. Yeah.
But when I write a novel, I'm like, this is cool. I'm putting this in. Yeah. This is cool. I'm putting this in. This guy has superpowers. This guy's got fucking this, and this guy.
There's that level in like video games as well, because a lot of video games they'll write the scene out and then they'll be like, oh well, our engine won't actually support all of those lichens, so we can do one lichen. How about you restructure the scene? And that's where that stipulation comes in there. Oh, well, we can't do it. It's a lot like, with script writing for a film. You think, oh, well, how am I going to make this work? Even with the first project that I showed you that I'm ultimately having in hiatus, it was like a tree falling, like lightning striking a tree and the tree falling. So I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to make that work? How am I going to do that? Well, I could do a little trick with the light and then a little pyrotechnics, have the tree fall over. We have this. Okay. And then you have this set piece. So then taking it and thinking of it logically of, okay, well, I like where I started off with this idea for this scene, but I'm going to need to change it because I need this a little bit more practical here. So, you know what? Now I have a better idea. And that's where that final film, you see the creators like, oh, well, originally we had this person or that person involved in the scene and we decided to cut that and go in this direction. That's kind of where those dots connect in my mind of like, oh, well, this is where that came from all those behind the scenes that I watched all throughout the years.
Yeah, I think the best thing about having a tree fall, if you really want to have a tree fall, is have the sound effect and then the trees on the road. Don't ever show it falling. You won't even have to worry about it.
It's like the Alfred Hitchcock, he didn't show people getting killed. He had
don't spill a drop of blood on screen. That was Hitchcock's favorite scene.
He had the symbology, and you look at Psycho and you're like, oh my God, what a masterpiece. But there's the implication of it. The implication of it makes it so much easier to film, but it adds something to it. It's that artiste, a little bit of spice on the top that you're like, okay, I like how you did that there. That
show the knife coming up, show it going down, but never show it going in.
Yeah. And that makes sense, and especially like one of the big things is like gunfire. After that Alec Baldwin incident, everybody's like, guns? How do we mean? You got to have a real serious thought process on guns on the set, especially, fake guns. How are you going to do it? That's the big thing now of if you're going to have that fake ammo, let's see. We have to have a training situation.
Proper fucking,
somebody.
What they call master of arms or something.
Yeah. Like you got to have somebody, because it's the same thing with if you want to have any fires, you have to have people trained in fires. You have to have that person on the staff on location so they can help expertly help you craft this. That's where the stipulations come in on the writing room. It's very easy to just write something in there and then be like, oh, well, hey, we can't actually do this, so we need you to rewrite this scene. And it's very easy to go in there. That's where novelization, I'm like, there is no limits but my mind. So maybe I'll go tiptoe
exactly
in
that. I love writing novels because of that, because I just throw shit. Like I do the whole Kevin Smith
to go
thing.
through and just have an idea and then have your editor say, hey, this makes no sense. And you're like, oh, well, all right, I'll just take care of that. And then you make it make sense. You show it to somebody and they're like, dude, this is the best thing I've ever written. I've never read anything better. And you're like, fucking did that, man. That's great. There's a great feeling.
When I wrote Black Rock originally, so me and Noel John Toohey, my former podcasting host, we conceptualized the story, and he wrote the first draft, and he had lots of cool stuff in it. Noel knows a lot. Jesus, try to say that 10 times real fast. But Noel knows a lot about horror. He really does. He knows a lot about filmmaking, storytelling. But he wrote it in the story that he wanted to see it. Mm-hmm. But I came from it from a different angle altogether. I wrote it in a way that I could possibly make it myself if I got the opportunity.
Right.
So I looked at it as zero budget. That was my mindset. When I was writing that, when I redrafted Black Rock, then I went on and redrafted it again and again and again. And now I completely reworked it completely now. I looked at it as zero budget the entire time. I'm like, how do I make this myself? Even 2 or 3 years ago, actually might be 4 years ago when we originally came up with this. The mindset I had even all the way back then was, if the opportunity arises for me to make this movie, I don't want budget. Mm-hmm. I don't want logistics to be the thing that stops me.
Yeah.
So this is well before we even talked about getting a med, because initially I always considered Black Rock to be someone else's project. I would write it. Me and Noel conceptualized it. That's why he gets her credit. I would write it. I would redraft it, blah, blah, blah. But it would eventually end up being another director's project. That's what I looked at. I never dreamt of getting into directing. I never planned on getting into directing. I've no knowledge of, well, I don't want to say I've no knowledge of directing. I've seen enough fucking movies. Yeah. I understand camera work. But the thing is, I never planned it. So, like, my plan was always I would just write, and I would write all these low-budget stuff, and I would get that one director that would constantly make my stuff. I tried that with an Irish guy. It didn't work. He was a bit of a dick about it. Totally blanked me, considering I had such a good relationship with him before. That was very disappointing. So I said to myself, I'll get someone else to make it, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, what if I make it?
Yeah.
How hard can it be? I said, there's that old saying, like, the difference between the people that... Excuse me. The difference between the people that succeed and fail are oftentimes the fact that the people that succeed actually did it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, like Gretzky says, you miss all the shots that you don't take.
Yeah.
So, because Ireland is full of begrudgers, I went outwards and I spoke. I was like, Jeff Schneider, a guy I know, who's such a likable individual, so supportive, so encouraging. And we spoke. And then he was like, no, dude, you can direct this. I can come over and shoot it for you. Yeah. And all this. And then I was like, and then he started guiding me through the process, because I knew so little about it. But one thing I am is incredibly willing learners. Like I said to you earlier, I've got this ridiculous thirst for knowledge and curiosity. So now we're probably, I'd say we're not going to make it this year. I'd say we're probably going to make it next summer in terms of funding, logistics, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just... when it comes to screenplay, if you're writing indie, write it in a way that maybe you can make it yourself eventually. Yeah. It's like when the project I worked on for you, there's a couple of set pieces in there, a couple of things that we spoke about before you went into the project, like the certain things that you wanted me to put in there and shit. But none of it's crazy budget. None of it takes millions and millions and millions. It just takes a smart mind and logistics.
Well, that's the thing. The best movies have the best stories. And that's really all you need, is a really good story. To have even, there was a movie that popped up in my feed because it did so well. It's called Iron Lung. It cost $3 million to make, and they just made 30. So that's an extremely big win for them. When you look at that, that tells me that's a good story. You put $3 million into a movie, which sounds like a lot when people see the word $3 million. But when you put down and actually budget out what you're spending that money on,
goes quickly.
You don't want to spend the millions and millions of dollars it costs to get Robert Downey Jr. The budget is the big thing, because that's your money that you're working from. One of the first fights that me and the First Lady ever had was when we were going over the budget for the movie, because we knew we had to get this right. You got to budget properly, because things are going to pop up. You're going to have things come in here and there, and then you're going to need to redo certain things. Having that wherewithal to go through and accurately budget out what you need. It is so surprising, especially when you look at promotions, of how quickly you get up to $3 million. I was there.
Yeah.
So being able to spend $3 million on a movie and then get 30 on the back end of that to where I saw one meme popped up to where some theaters didn't even have posters. They just had a little white thing on the, the attraction space for the poster, and it just said Iron Lung. Looked like it was written in Sharpie. But this thing is making $30 million because the story is probably one that you're like, all right, Iron Lung, what is that about? I got to know. Like, okay, let's go deeper in here. And one of the things that people will instantly go to, especially with a movie, if you look at fantasy, no, it's not fantasy. It's horror. Yeah. Everybody will watch a horror movie. I don't like fantasy. No, I don't like sci-fi. Oh, I don't like crime and drama. People will have a butt for everything. But if you have horror, oh, well, how scary is it? That's when that question comes out. Because everybody's seen a movie that people say are scary, and it's just like a couple of jump scares and some gore. Like, okay, so you don't like gore. Well, if you don't like gore, all right, I get it. You won't like that one. How about this one? There's always a slightly scary movie that people will then put into a full-on classic horror definition.
And horror is oftentimes the greatest entry point for young actors, young filmmakers, young writers, because
directors,
it's a genre that is incredibly versatile. As you said, it hits so many different demographics. It finds its way into so many different audiences very easily because so many people like different types of horror. But not only that, is you can make a very effective horror for very low budget. Like, as long as the perfect example is,
especially
like
from
Halloween.
A writer perspective, it's relatively easy to write a horror, as opposed to if you're going to write a historical pick, or if you're going to do like a drama that's interesting. It's so much harder to write a scene that flows well, that doesn't have explosions and bombs and other shit going off. If you have to like depend on the narrative to drive that story forward, it's got to be a good narrative. You got to have a lot of thought process into that, to where, a horror movie, some slashes, maybe an explosion, you have, some crashes, you have a rain scene, classic stuff that adds to the suspense. It adds to the drama. It adds to it so quickly that when you make that recipe of a horror movie, it's a lot easier. There's already a suspended disbelief because, oh, it's a horror? Oh, okay. Well, I'll just turn my brain off. As long as it kind of fits with it, we're good. And even then,
and the thing about
you look at like Michael Myers, always walking after people. He's one of the most favorite popular characters in all of film. Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, two people who have never ran after anything in their life.
And the thing is, the reason like horror is such a great entryway is because the effects are often done practically.
Yeah.
And like if you look at like River Bones, right, that would be a logistical nightmare to make. It's set in 1870. You've got hordes of skinwalkers. You've got monster hunters. You've got cowboys. It's like it's set in the Midwest. So you've got horrific weather conditions.
Clothing. What existed then? Well, actually, that didn't exist yet. So what was more popular is this. So you should actually have this written in there. That is so much fucking harder than writing just a regular horror piece set in your normal day and age. Because you can say he picks up his iPhone and it was dead. In 1870, that wouldn't have meant shit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my genre. Like, when I write novels and novellas, my genre is historical horror. Like, that is the genre I operate in. Lonely Lighthouse is set in the 1900s, which I think Lonely Lighthouse would be incredibly easy to make. If you had a really solid filmmaker, it'd be very easy to make. It's about one guy on an island, pretty much. It'd be very easy to make if you could find the right location. And I've looked at my ideas for my books and stuff, and I think Lonely Lighthouse would be the best chance of getting it made as an independent movie because of the premise itself and because the cast is so small. But River Bones, it'd be a logistical nightmare completely. We Are Manny that I'm working on right now, that would possibly, if you had a decent budget, it could probably be made as an independent thing because it's all one location, apart from a couple of places before they get there. Yeah. But like, it's pretty much all one location, and it's just it's a set cast. Like, there's no characters coming in and out, but there'd be a lot of extras and practicals. That's to be the only problem with that. Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, CGI. And that's the kind of the big answer to if you do want a lot of that stuff. Oh, we want Jeff Bridges, but we want him in, how he was in the 80s. Well, that's CGI. And now you're putting the dots on the face, and that's where
mocap.
I'm pretty sure it was Marvel, or maybe it was just Disney in general. But I know it was affecting Marvel when Shang-Chi came out. It was the conditions. It came out, there were problems with the conditions for the VFX artists on the film, because they're being put under such strict deadlines. And it's a lot like comparing to the manga artists and anime artists today. You do not want to work for one of them. Their schedules, you get maybe 2 hours to sleep, and then the rest of your day is packed out and listed for you. The actual work ethic and dedication needed to do one of those jobs is, even the Hunter x Hunter, the creator, was infamously always going through some kind of health emergency. That's why they called it hiatus x hiatus. It kept going on a medical leave because of how much pressure and stress and trauma that they're putting the bodies under, just keeping these strict deadlines. And that's where, what are we going to do to alleviate that a little bit? Well, if you try how about just trying to make a movie without CGI? If all you have to do is make a clever background, pop them in a green screen, and then pop the background in there. That's less invasive as having these big Marvel movies with the superhero stuff. You have to have a lot of effects, and most of those are going to be CGI. And, that's not to say that AI isn't going to help them with that in the future. They're going to find a way to have AI help them make that into a thing. Even if there are the laws protecting the actors, there's still going to be AI involved, maybe to alleviate the VFX artist a little bit. Hey, we'll use AI VFX on this, and we got it exactly how we wanted it.
I know with Thor Ragnarok, the VFX artists had a real hard time, and that's why there's so much poor special effects in that movie. The floating head sticks out. And but in terms of AI helping, I know Darren Aronofsky recently just released a historical series, and it's entirely AI. And it's been completely lambasted. It's supposed to be absolutely terrible. The thing is, AI is great, but I don't want it to tell our stories. Right. I have one rule with my ChatGPT is that literally, if you were to go into it on my old phone, I haven't put it on my new phone yet, but if you go into my old phone, if you ask my ChatGPT, what's the one rule? It cannot help me with writing. That's the one rule. Sometimes I will help use it to I will structure. I would go, okay, what should I work on next? And then I would have my projects lined up, and I would look at it in terms of a time scale. But the one rule is, it'll be like, oh, how about I help you with this? And I go, no. The one rule of my, I don't want AI giving me prompts. I will give it prompts. I won't use it for my writing whatsoever, because there's just nothing when you talk about anime and manga artists being under that strict deadline. I can remember when I was up against it for River Bones, and it was in badly need of a rewrite in terms of the final third of the novel. I didn't have ChatGPT back then. I didn't have Grok. I didn't have any of these things to lean on. So what I did was I threw myself at the project. I went 10-hour days, 12-hour days, sitting in front of my laptop with my notebook out, with previous drafts out, looking at what ways I can better develop the story. And it was one of the most challenging periods of my life. I did that for 5 months straight, 10-hour days, 12-hour days, no matter how tired I was, no matter how bored I felt at times, no matter how defeated I felt by the story in terms of trying to structure a narrative, because it was my first novel. All of it was a learning curve. But that 5 months taught me so much about myself, taught me so much about storytelling, taught me so much about my passion in terms of how much I actually want to be a writer, because I've never, ever, ever poured that much time into anything that I wasn't getting paid to do. Because there was no boss telling me, keep doing it, keep hitting your deadlines, keep hitting your goals, keep structuring, keep getting better. There was nobody doing that. It was just me and my editor. My editor wasn't telling me what to do. My editor was just saying, we need to get this done by a certain point if you want me to do typesetting, if you want me to do formatting, because it would take 6 or 7 weeks to do all of these things. Mm-hmm. So you need to have your book ready by this time if we want to hit our projected publishing date.
Yeah.
So for 5 months straight, I sat in front of my laptop and I taught myself a lot about myself. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about writing, and I would never, ever, ever trade that for a simplistic like way of getting out of that. I would never, ever trade those 5 months and hundreds of hours that I poured into that book for a quick fix with an AI or a prompt or anything, because if you want to be an artist, or to say art is pain, and you kind of really need, like, it's the whole Hemingway thing. Writing is not difficult. You just have to sit down at your typewriter and bleed. That's what he said, and that's my whole thing. With people ask me, do I ever suffer writer's block, and I say no, because of the whole thing is piss poor perform. Was it piss poor planning leads to poor planning leads to piss poor performance, and that's why I don't suffer from writer's block. I never go near my laptop unless I have an outline ready. I never go near my laptop unless I know where my story's going. And it's not because I don't have moments of complete creative like blankness or creative opaqueness or anything like that. It's the exact opposite. It's just that I plan everything out to a point that by the time I sit at my laptop, is all I'm doing is transcribing. Because remember when we spoke about the project we were working on, what's the very first thing I said to you is like, I'm slow getting started, but once I get started, my first drafts are normally very solid.
Yeah.
And you even said that in the notes. You're like, I just can't believe that this is the first draft. It's really solid. It's really damn good and all this kind of stuff. Because for 2 or 3 months before I wrote a single word, me and you talked, we batted around ideas. I created a watch list. I figured out what kind of subgenre of horror we were dealing with. What tropes to look at, what cliches worked, what things the classic movies use, pacing, reveals, all of these things I learned in those 2 or 3 months, and then I set it to task. So by the time I wrote the opening for the project that we were working on, like I have it here, I have all my notes here, like for the project we were working on, I have pages and pages and pages, little stupid diagrams, asking myself questions. Like, this is one thing I will tell anybody that wants to be a writer to do. If you're working on a project, ask yourself questions. So on any project that I start, I will get a page and I will just write down all these questions. What does the character's motives? What does the character want to do? How does this affect him? How is it? And I will ask 15, 20 questions, and then I will go about answering them on the page. Character wants to do this. Its motivations are this. Its end game is this. The character wants to do this and this and this and this and this. And by the end of it, I will look and I go, okay, now I've got a motivational structural outline for my story before I do anything. And then I do an overarching narrative outline based off those questions, because I know the direction I want to send my story for the motivations for my characters. And then once I have a narrative outline worked out, I know exactly where the story goes from A to B to C to D. And then I go, okay, I go back to the very start and I do a scene by scene breakdown. And this is, I don't think this will suit everybody, because I'm very anal when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm very meticulous, because, as I said, this is how I avoid writer's block, by planning like a psycho. But like, so what I would always say is, like, if you want to be a writer or anything like that, and it's cool to play in these sandboxes and stuff, but you have to do what me and my brother did. You have to get all the toys. You have to line them all out on the table. You have to break them down into teams, and then you have to go, who's he? What's he? Who's he? What's his motivation? How do I get him from A to B to C? And you have to do that with every character. You can't do the Game of Thrones thing where you go, oh, let's just write out Dorne. We won't give them an ending. Let's just forget about this thread. Let's forget about this loose end. Stranger Things did the exact same thing. Yeah. So what I always say, like, with River of Bones, what I did was, without giving away too much, characters come into it as the story evolves, but it always remained Jeremiah Solomon's story. Yeah. It always remained his story. The problem with Game of Thrones is they forgot whose story they were telling. It was ostensibly, it's the story of the Lannisters and the Starks. Anything that takes away from the narrative attention of the Lannisters and the Starks should not be given more time than it deserves, because at the end of the day, the story is about the Lannisters and the Starks. And the Targaryens. You add in dragons, you add in political intrigue, you add in deception. All of these three things need to be focused on the most: the Lannisters, the Starks, and the Targaryens. And once Game of Thrones forgot about that, that's when the narrative became muddy and shit. The same with Stranger Things. You can't go into your final season, you can't have all of these open threads, you can't have all these loose ends, and then start going, oh, Holly Wheeler, let's dedicate our last season to a brand new character we never fleshed out. What the fuck are you doing?
Or why did you even have me as a character at all with the faceless man?
Exactly.
You did nothing with her besides say, all right, now your story starts over there.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people say that the Faceless Man story had no real narrative climax for Arya, but in a sense it did, for one reason and one reason only. Arya Stark spent 2 seasons trying to forget who she was, and by rejecting the Faceless Men, she accepted being a Stark and returned to Winterfell. Along the way, she killed the people that killed her loved ones. Baelor, what was his name? The guys that control the bridges. I can't remember his name, but the guy who killed her family at the Red Wedding. Spoilers.
Yes.
But
yeah.
So a lot of people say that narrative didn't have a real narrative payoff in terms of the Faceless Man thing. But it really did, because Arya Stark spent 2 seasons trying to forget who she was, and eventually she accepted who she was, and that's the only way she could actually find solace, not by rejecting her origins, is by accepting. Because she said, I never want to be a princess. I never wanted to be these things. I only wanted to have sword fights and be a great warrior and all this.
Yeah.
And that's why she wanted to be a Faceless Man. I just want to kill. I want to do these great adventures. But she realized she had to admit, no matter where she goes in the world, no matter who she pretends to be, she will always be Arya Stark. And that's why I think those 2 seasons of her being a Faceless Man and trying to be an assassin, or was it a season, I think they're incredibly important to her character development, even though a lot of people didn't see the payoff that they wanted. But because it was all about her journey of actually rediscovering herself.
See,
it was a cyclical journey, you know.
I love Game of Thrones, I do, and I'm enjoying. I told you, I'm enjoying the Night of the Seven Kingdoms show. I'm fantastically more into that than I am the House of Dragons, and it doesn't. It has no dragons. It has no fire. It's just a very good, compelling drama. And the thing that I saw is with George R.R. Martin, the problem with Game of Thrones is that he's kind of. I don't want to say crumbling, but he's suffocating under his own success, because there's such a demand and such a want and a need for all these projects that he's doing. He hasn't finished Winds of Winter because he's like, well, I got 2 more Dunk and Egg novellas that I want to write. And then there's the stuff with the shows. I got to help with the shows. And he's got so much on his plate of keeping this mega giant franchise spinning, that when you're doing a novel, especially something as intricate as a Game of Thrones novel, and these novels are not short. They're not short at all. They're lengthy novels. They're like novels you'd be like, oh yeah, I read Game of Thrones. And you're like, wow, holy shit. I listened to it, okay? Reading it. This is a thick novel. So going through and having to write all of that. He used to do like 1,000 pages, in a short time. Now, he has a lot more mythos, a lot more stuff to double check, make sure I'm not stepping on my toes. But he's he's still crafting the world. He said out there that, my ending is going to be so much better than the show. And I believe that, because there are characters alive in the books and that exist in the books that don't in the show. Like Otto Hightower wasn't even mentioned until the Fire and Dragons show, but he was all throughout. The Hightowers were all throughout the Game of Thrones books, just like Stark's mom. She's there, and you're just like, oh my god, where is this going? There's so many plot threads in that book that people are like, but give me the book. That he's still just struggling, trying to keep his own fucking franchise going, and he's like, I still want to write this over here, but I gotta keep this going.
This is what I'm saying though, right? Because it started off the whole thing of, I always kind of harken back to this, is the whole thing what David says in Prometheus. Great things come from small beginnings.
Yeah.
All right. So pretty much his great thing of Game of Thrones is this a great expansive world that he has, and Dunk and Egg and all these novellas, blah blah blah. But ostensibly, like I said, it's about the Starks, it's about the Targaryens, and it's about the Lannisters. Once he started to diverge away from those, that's why he got crushed under the weight of his own narrative. If he stopped adding all these trades and stopped adding all these extra characters and stopped expanding and expanding, because you can keep expanding into infinitum, whatever, all you want.
Yeah. Too many spinning plates.
Yeah, exactly. You need to keep your core narrative. Like with River of Bones, without saying too much, I will be going further with the narrative. But at the core, I'm never going to lose
I'm never going to lose the idea of it's someone else's story.
Yeah.
I fell in love with this character that I have in River Bones, and I introduced her later on, and I give her great moments in the story, and I give her really strong, big moments in the story. But yeah, I never got away from the fact it's Jeremiah Solomon's story. Yeah. Never, not once. I never gave her priority over him. I never gave her narrative priority over his. And I would never do that. Once, if I want to write a trilogy, whatever, in the end of the day, there's one thing that made me write that trilogy, and that was the main character, the protagonist's story. And that will be remaining my main focus throughout. No matter how I expand in follow-ups, no matter how great I make the universe, how big I make things, how much the scope will change, of course, because of the new mythos and new characters, he will always remain my main focus. His story will always be priority numero uno. Closing off his narrative thread from A to B to C will always remain my priority. No matter if I add this cool skinwalker, this cool airborne, this cool monster, this cool whatever, it'll always be about Jeremiah Solomon at the core of it. And the reason George R.R. Martin cannot finish his books, and I believe he won't, I think he will die before he finishes that series.
Oh yeah, he'll definitely die before he
because of his age and because like the fact that he's fat as fuck, he doesn't look after himself. So he's definitely going to drop off. He's going to drop off 100%. What he would do if he was really loyal to his narrative, I just don't think he actually has an ending. I don't think he knows where the story goes, because if he did, he would hire ghostwriters, or he would bring in a Brandon Sanderson or someone like that, someone that can write high volume of work in a short period of time. Because if he knew where the narrative was going, he would allow someone else to help him get there. But I don't think he does.
Yeah. Well, there may also be a bit of controlling nature there, to where only I know where this must go. Because you kind of get that with George Lucas. Even George Lucas has said notoriously, like, nobody understands Star Wars like me. No, you're all getting it.
Well, after a while, though, it seemed like he didn't even understand Star Wars as good as him.
It seemed like it got a bit away from him.
Yeah, like because you get crushed under the weight of your own narrative. Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. Because like I have these ideas for big stories, but I'm never going to get away from the idea behind the big story in the first place. Like River Bones has all these cool set pieces and battle scenes and big explosions and monsters and all. At the end of the day, it's just a revenge story.
Yeah.
I can fill in the gaps with cool monster hunters and all this thing, talk about magic, talk about expanded lore, talk about creatures, mythos, history. At the end of the day, it's about Jeremiah. Yeah. About Jeremiah getting the revenge for his loved ones being murdered.
Yeah.
And everything else is just icing. Yeah. That's the cake. The cake right there is Jeremiah's revenge. Mm-hmm. That's the cake. That's the payoff. Him getting from A to B to C, him seeking his revenge from the person that murdered his family. That's the payoff. Everything else is just icing.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, you had to realize the whole idea is who ascends to the throne. But he got obsessed with, this person and this person. Everybody wants to be fucking Tolkien. Nobody's Tolkien. Stop trying to be Tolkien, okay? Yeah. You see all these other people like, I've got the third age of Pyrosus and Fissurus and all this. Bro, if I can't fucking pronounce your character's name without getting a dictionary that you fucking created to show me the pronunciation of these characters' names, I don't want to know about it. You're not Tolkien, bro. Nobody needs to have a third age of the elves and the fourth age of trolls and dwarves and all this.
Well, people put too much into lore and mythology than the actual story itself.
Yeah, there's no need for it. Nobody's going to be Tolkien. People say, I wrote a story and then I created a language, and Tolkien created a language and he wrote a story. Like, nobody's ever going to be that fucking meticulous. Guess why? Yeah. Because we live in the modern age. There's too many distractions now, okay? Tolkien lived back in post-World War I.
Well, you look at
nothing to do.
Harry Potter and what and what she did with it. She made up words. She made up a whole bunch of them. Muggle and all that shit. Yeah. She added them in there. But there was an overall bigger story. That was the sprinkles on the sundae. That wasn't, they weren't giving you a bowl full of sprinkles. They were giving you the whole thing. And that's the kind of thing that really evolved that. And
she never lost sight, though.
They're redoing that whole thing into a fucking TV series. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing everybody has already saw. They're just making it a TV show.
Yeah.
So
because there's such a bereftness of the original IP at the moment. Like, I actually predicted this back in 2020. I said post-pandemic, all you're going to see is reboots, remakes, and pre-existing properties with fan bases already built in are the only things that are going to get made.
Oh, yeah.
And it's literally, I said this 6 years ago. I couldn't have been any more right. Unfortunately, I was so right. But
book
at least down the
adaptations were a big
last 2 or
one.
3
They were
years.
like, "Oh, you have a book? Let's make you into a series. Come on over here this way."
Yeah, exactly. Or like to get people into theaters, let's have non-stop superhero movies, and let's have horror franchises reboots. Let's have fucking another Halloween trilogy. Let's have another Exorcist movie. Let's have another fucking Omen movie. Like literally, it's everything that has a pre-existing fan
Here's
base.
another
because if you-
Jumanji.
Yeah, here's another fucking Jumanji. What, two of them, three of them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, So that's the problem, and everything now is like, let's remake, let's reboot, because and people always lambast streaming services. Well, streaming services are the only bodies that are only fucking services that are actually letting independent filmmakers make movies. Like, really, like, look at the amount of horror movies Shudder have made over the last few years.
Oh yeah,
it's all low budget, all indie.
Look at Trauma.
They're given.
Trauma. They've putting out, those. I'm not trying to insult you, but that's how they're listed as shitty horror movies, like those B-roll horror movies. They're putting out a bunch of them. If you're a fan of horror, even the ridiculous horror, there you go. And, Tubi, there's a bunch of different streaming services that have that. And then to say, oh, well, streaming's dead. Well, it's not going away either. So you got to find a way to prop up that dead corpse, because somebody's got to give the entertainment.
But see, the problem with streaming in terms of in comparison to box office, I spoke about this before, is there's a different market model. So with box office, it's customer acquisition. Every time you release a movie, you have to acquire new customers. Unless, like, even if you have a pre-existing fan base, you still have to acquire those customers. You still have to convince them to come to the theater.
Got to get
But with streaming services, it's about keeping your customers. It's not about acquiring new customers.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that they come back. So you have to give them stuff that they already like. So they're both in a similar state of stasis. But the thing with streaming services is, because they need to create so much content and continuously create so much content, they're more open to the idea of allowing independent filmmakers and creators and storytellers to use their service and their platform to tell their stories. But because theaters are acquiring customers and not retaining customers, they can't take the same kind of risks. And because sometimes the studio might only release 1 or 2 movies in a year, instead of like a streaming services that will release maybe 60 movies in a year, they can't take the same risks. They have to have a big tentpole movie. It has to be a Dune. It has to be an MCU. It has to be something fucking from Warner Brothers, who cannot seem to make a good superhero movie anymore. Like, what is going on with Warner Brothers? It's like, let's have 15 Superman movies. Let's have 14 Batman movies. Let's have 16 fucking Wonder Woman movies. Bro, do you not realize you had the Green Lantern?
Oh,
like, make a good Green Lantern movie. You have the Flash. Make a good Flash movie.
Yeah, they got a whole bunch of more characters in that. Even Blue Beetle, Captain Atom. There's so many different characters that they haven't focused on, and
Batman's like James Bond now.
What's that?
Batman's like James Bond now.
Well, yeah. I mean, Batman always kind of was that Sherlock Holmes detective spy kind of thriller, to where Superman was more the overall, wider galaxy. It's the same aspect.
I just
mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was different than like Iron Man, even though they both may take on the same kind of threats. DC just has had a problem with leadership, and their leadership.
Yeah, no, the reason I say that is, the problem with Batman is that a new person plays him every few years, like James Bond.
Yeah.
But if you look at Marvel, who's Iron Man? Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Thor, Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Who's Batman? Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, Robert Pattinson.
Adam West. Yeah. There's
Adam West. You know what I mean? Like, you see what I'm saying? There's so many iterations that there's the difference between the MCU and DCU is that Marvel have created an identity from one actor to their character, so they become ingrained. So we have a real sense of that character, because he's not getting rebooted every 2 or fucking 4 years,
right,
like the way Batman is.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, because with Marvel we go, okay, like, I know She-Hulk's about to be recast, but like very rarely do they recast. I know Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard. But very rarely, if you look at a Marvel project, that, like, look at Chris Hemsworth. He was Captain America 9 or 10 fucking times. Yeah. He'll always be Steve Rogers. I don't care who played him before. I don't care if anyone plays him after. And that's the issue I know Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson is having, replacing him. Yeah. Because we don't want a different Captain America. Yeah. I love the fact that we're seeing that the mantle of the character is being carried on throughout the movies.
Just like in the comics, it's following
just
the
like
narrative.
Exactly, because
That's
it's like
nice.
it's a legacy.
But it's,
like, it's a legacy.
winning over the people to get them back in there for the franchise. You have to win them over, just like the comics had to win them back over with this character Falcon becoming Captain America. You have to win them back over for this, just like they did. You have, if you're going to draw from the comic inspiration, that's the best way to get a proper comic book movie. But a proper comic book movie is still a slave to its own fandom and franchise. And that's where you find in the actual real nerdy stuff that comes out content-wise, if there's a very big fandom on it. Case in point, Dune. That is a huge fandom. I tried listening through the books, and I felt like I needed a goddamn family tree just to get through it. So I never made it through. But, you know, you look at it, it's got a massive fan base on it. And it's not to the point of Star Wars. You had Dune in the 70s, and now you have this new series of Dune coming out in the movies and different I think there's another one, series coming out on HBO Max in the Dune universe.
Dune Prophecy.
Yeah, they can do that because, yes, it has this massive fandom, but it hasn't been tapped properly. So it hasn't been accurately portrayed. Once you have an accurate portrayal of a character, it's harder to convince people that this other person is that character. But everybody loved Ray Stevens as the Punisher. John Bernthal comes walking around, and they're like, "Okay, well, you're fine. Yeah, you're okay. You're acceptable." Same thing with Michael Keaton. After him, it was a while before you got to the people who were actually infatuated with Ben Affleck's Batman, and him not having any amount of even appearances like Christian Bale's 3 movies. The amount of screen time you get with Christian Bale as Batman, and them taking Batman and putting him in the real world, allowed everybody to get into that character because, oh, well, this is how I want my billionaires to act. I want you guys to go act like that Batman. It allows that veil to be a little bit more easier for people to swallow that pill.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you can change, if you are constantly reiterating the character, if you can change the interpretation of how that character is viewed in terms of its own singular narrative, you can avoid comparisons. Yeah. So when you spoke a minute ago about Ray Stevenson and then John Bernthal, so Ray Stevenson was directed by Lexi Alexander, Punisher Warzone, and that was a comic book accurate portrayal of the Punisher and how he behaves in the comic book. Yeah. But John Bernthal is a version of the Punisher's how he would be perceived in the real world. Yeah. And that's pretty much how you avoid these comparisons. It's kind of like how nobody can really, in my mind, compare Ben Affleck's Batman to Christian Bale's. Yeah. But you'd be more accurate in terms of comparing Robert Pattinson's Batman to Christian Bale, because both of them are conceived to how they would be perceived in a real version of Gotham in terms of how it would be encapsulated within our own global outlook or whatever.
And even the differences between those two being in the real world, you're right. That's how you do it. And Batman is kind of a good baseline for people to go and figure that out, because look at what James Gunn is doing with Superman. It was one of the most successful Superman because he made it a comic book movie, the most comic book of movies out there. Yeah. It had a giant fucking kaiju for no reason other than to have a giant kaiju. I don't know how much more comic book you can get than that.
He loves kaijus, James Gunn. Yeah. He had one in the Suicide Squad as well.
Oh, we were rewatching. We went through and we watched Multiverse of Madness, and I told Jill, I was like, I can't remember what goddamn car it is, but there's 2 things that always pop up in a Sam Raimi movie: Bruce Campbell, and I forget what the fuck that car is, but it's like a 70. I want to say it's like a 70 Dodge or something. It always pops up. That's what you get with some directors sometimes, to where they just have like, I really like this actor. Come on, Bruce. And he's in every Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah, like it's little cookies like that. But I just think, like, with the difference between Marvel and DC is that one word you mentioned earlier, and that's just leadership. It's the reason Star Wars is falling asunder as well, because Kathleen Kennedy didn't have a fucking clue what she was doing. Yeah, she really didn't.
Like, people can say, oh, sexism, whatever. No, not really. Like, she's just shit at her job. It's
she
nothing to do
wanted
with
to
the
be
fact that she's a woman.
inclusive and change the formula of Star Wars. And then fans, no, they didn't like what how she was helming it. You see Dave Filoni coming through with Jon Favreau, and those two masterminds creating some of the best Star Wars out there. Tony Gilroy with Andor and Rogue One. Some of the best, most Star Wars cinematic pieces of work ever. If you look through both seasons of Andor and then watch Rogue One, then just watch the original trilogy. That is an enjoyable experience. That's probably the closest George Lucas kind of Star Wars that we've gotten. And in Andor, we didn't see any goddamn Jedi. Not one.
Yeah.
It was just the Star Wars universe and people and the struggle and the government and all that political drama. All that selling the world and just the brilliant storytelling that it did, covering the amount of years that it did in the universe, expanding out the universe at the same time, doing all the different things that we mentioned during this podcast of good writing. They did it in this universe that has such emotional baggage with such bad leadership. It's possible to have that and not have something like The Acolyte. I loved The Acolyte when it came out. I still love it. But did they do the best job? No, because when I hear the stuff that's coming out of the art book from the Acolyte and the concepts and all the plans they had for the project, that sounded way better. That's what happens when you have bad leadership changing the project. That's how we got The Flash, with everybody putting their fingers in the pie, changing that into an absolute train wreck of a movie that was supposed to start off as Flashpoint. Not hard. That's an easy prospect if you have all your property.
With Star Wars, with all the ineptitude that occurred over the years with Lucasfilm and Disney taking over and the issues that they had with the sequel trilogy, one thing I would give to Star Wars is it never lost the idea that this was the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
That's what those 9 movies are called. They never, ever, ever wandered off the path. They focused on Anakin in the prequels. Mm-hmm. They focused on Luke in the original trilogy. And in the sequels, we focused on Rey, even though I know she's technically not a Skywalker. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. The story
I'm Rey Skywalker. No, you're not.
She was essentially...
You're not Skywalker.
I mean, by the end of that trilogy, she was essentially a Skywalker. She hung out with Leia. She got training from Luke and Leia, the two last surviving Jedi. She's about as Skywalker as you get, son.
No, she doesn't have Skywalker blood. She's a fucking Palpatine, bro.
She's a step Skywalker.
She's a fucking Palpatine. Like Finn as well. Look, I as well. What I thought would have been so interesting, right, about the fucking sequel trilogy was they had this great character Finn, played by John Boyega. And they're like, let's have a stormtrooper who suffers from PTSD, who revolts against the identity that he was given at birth, and he decides to join the Rebel Force. Let's just fucking ignore that amazing story.
Leave him alone.
It's like that.
Don't do anything with that character.
Let's just do a Luke Skywalker rehash.
And we'll start to give him a love interest and then do nothing with it.
Yeah, like it's like he like at one stage I thought he was going to end up with Poe Dameron.
Yeah.
Or he was going to end up with Rey. But he didn't end up with anybody.
No. And then there was the little Korean girl over there in the corner they had for a couple minutes, and you're just like, what are you doing with this character?
Kenny Lou Tran or something like that, and she got absolutely destroyed online, and absolutely. And they were like, instead of let's bring that might be so fucking much about J.J. Abrams. So like, okay, I'm going to create this narrative outline with Force Awakens. And then I'm just going to walk away and let's see what fucking, what was his name? Not Josh Trank. Ryan Johnson. Ryan Johnson, they were like, let's see what he does with the movie. And then when he comes back, instead of just saying, hey, look, you did some things I didn't agree with, but I'm going to adhere to the narrative outline that you continue to. He just goes, no, I'm going to kill that character. You don't exist anymore. No, like we're not going to tie off your narrative end. Yeah. By the way, somehow Palpatine has returned. Dude, you fucking for real? So you planned out a trilogy. Number one, you give your middle to another director.
Yeah.
Who's going to rewrite your scripts because he's going to want to tell his own story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you don't have it. They clearly didn't have an ending worked out. And then we're like, oh, Star Wars is so frustrating because like
that's also kind of par for the course for J.J. Abrams, the guy coming from Lost fame. I mean, not knowing how to end things used to be a Stephen King joke, But now you also have J.J. Abrams that you can add into that as well.
I hate when directors do that. He did that with Star Trek as well. He did it with Star. He did the first two movies, and then he's like, and then you can have the third one. Like that annoys me because like I've always made the promise to myself, if I ever got attached to a franchise, no matter how fucking stupid that franchise gets, I'm going to make every movie. I'm there the whole way.
I don't care if it's Rambo 16. I'm making it. God damn it.
Yeah. Exactly. Like that, and that annoys me when directors start these franchises and then they fucking disappear. It's like, bro, it's your story. Finish it. Yeah. And then they complain about how this would have ended it a different way. Well, you should have fucking finished the job, bro. Like you're making dinner. You don't just turn the oven off when the food is 3/4 away cooked and then complain about how it tastes.
Yeah.
It was your job to see it through. It's your job to prepare that dish. It's your job to make sure it's cooked. It's your job to put it on the plate. It's your job to make sure it's presentable. It's your job that it tastes good. And not just for your palate, but for other people's palate. That's what cooking is. That's how you make a meal.
Yeah. Are you a chef or are you a cook? That's the difference. Yeah. And the same thing comes down into any profession, especially when it comes down into writing. You see these projects, even when they get thrown millions and millions of dollars behind them, if that story is shit, it's not going to go anywhere. People aren't going to watch it. You know, it's one of those things that there's a lot of ways that it can go wrong, but in indie projects, that's usually where you find it go right. The person doesn't have anything tying them down. This is my idea in the best form that I can get it right now. And then when you follow that indie person, you see the expansion of their talents and how they grow as an artist. And that's where we get to the Steven Spielbergs. You know, I mean, you take a look at some of these amazing directors like Steven Spielberg and Quentin Tarantino. They didn't go to film school before they started their amazing movie career. Steven Spielberg went after, and they actually showed examples of his work to him in class. And he's like, oh.
You know what really always bugs me, right? You know when a filmmaker adapts something and then they change everything about it? So you weren't interested in the story, you were interested in the brand. Yeah. Like, so if someone adapts River Bones, I'm going to ask them one question, only one question. Do you intend to tell my version of the story, or do you intend to tell your version of the story? Because if they come to me at the start and go, I want to tell your story, I want to be true to the source material, then I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, but you're going to have to adhere to the decisions I made for the reasons I made it, because you're telling my story. Yeah. But when but if a director says to me, I like what your story has, I like the basis, I like a lot of the themes, but I want to tell my version of it. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, cool. Go do your thing. Just no race swapping any of my characters, because I don't want Jeremiah Solomon to be a Chinese dude in 1870 all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a different story completely.
Yeah, he wouldn't even be able to say his name. I'm sorry.
Fantastic podcast, my dude. I'm gonna cap off the podcast here. Another amazing one. Start to just call this one Perjangers Perjanging, man. We'll just get together and podcast every once in a while. A new show on the network that has evolved.
Of course.
I even thought about this while we're podcasting. I was like, you know what? That last podcast we do, I'm gonna go back and rename that. That's good. That's gonna be the first Perjangers Perjanging episode. This is episode 2 of Perjangers Perjanging. So we got 2 episodes out of this show on the network. A nice start to it, and it's good just kind of, you know, bullshitting around and see. We went absolutely everywhere in this podcast, from ancient Egypt all the way back into writing and the bigger franchises and how they're maybe not going in the right direction because of leadership, bad writing, or whatever have you.
We shifted from talking about how AI affects society to how it affects writing and creativity.
Oh, yeah. We go absolutely everywhere. And we told everybody whose jobs are in trouble. Now you know.
Now you know, people.
You know if you work in a factory that time's a ticking.
But honestly, bro, thanks again for having me. And I love shooting the shit with like-minded people. I spoke to someone about this recently. The one thing podcast does that the normal everyday conversation doesn't do is present you with a real focused, honest, proper, in-depth conversation. Because I fucking hate small talk. I hate these little snippets of conversations you have with people in work, or most everyday life is just chitter chatter bullshit. How are you? How is this? How is that? Blah blah blah. What are you doing? Blah blah blah. What's your plans? I love sitting down, getting into the deep end of any kind of topic. I really don't care what the topic is, as long as we can discuss it openly, honestly, and in depth. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do that.
That's where podcasting is it shines, is giving people the time and the actual format to just talk at things at length. I like to see where the conversation goes, because you'd be surprised at what you can learn in the conversation from anybody that you speak to, if you actually just give it time and actually have the back and forth expansion of minds, as it were, in the conversation. So definitely not the last time we're going to be getting together. More podcasts on the way. And to check out the Perjangers and Wallhangers Media Network, all you got to do is go to pjandwh.com, and that's where you're going to find all of the Perjanging and Wangy content. It's probably the last time I'll use that tagline. That's a little it's a little dirty.
A bit thick. A bit what's the word I'm looking for? A bit flaccid. No. What's
phallic?
Phallic.
There we go. Yeah, phallic. A bit flaccid phallically. It came out. Not the erect phallus that I intended, but that's how it goes.
And if you want to see something flaccid, please check out my OnlyFans.
There you go. I mean, they're expanding content out there, but
it doesn't expand. It does not expand. It's flaccid. It's very flaccid.
I end up this podcast the same damn way every time, is that I love you, I miss you, and I can't wait to see you next time, gang. Until then, drive on and game on, boys and girls. Bye-bye.